like the whole Jewish Olympic stuff, which he of course looked up. He had to look up online. He's like, dude, I can't believe this is real.
Morning, guys. How are you?
We're doing good.
You done building the cabinet over there?
Hey,
Whatever you were doing.
You know what? all you can just all shove it up your asses as far as I was. Let me tell you a story. So I was on this big adventure, right? Rode motorcycle up to Seattle and back to Vegas, and 104 degrees and blah, blah, blah. And then had this great epic adventure of walking to the bus, which conveniently goes to the airport from the Southern Command. And I was just dead tired. So the girlfriend gets back early this afternoon. I say, girlfriend, I'm going to go and take it. I'm going to watch Midnight Run. And I knew I was going to fall asleep. I say, girlfriend, wake me up like at 5:30. 5:30 is when I got it. I got to wake up and get the thing going and everything. She's okay. Yeah, I'll wake you up. So I fall dead asleep. I don't make it more than 10 minutes into Midnight Run. And all of a sudden I wake up because the music keeps replaying itself over and over. I look at the watch. It's like 5:50. I'm like, girlfriend, she's sitting right there. Because she's working on accounting stuff. Said, girlfriend, when were you going to wake me up? She's like, what? I'm like, dear, it's 5:50. She's like, oh, yeah, you should get up now. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. Thanks.
So did you proceed to launch into the Midnight Run? Fucking.
TJ, have you seen that movie Midnight Run?
It's been a while, man. It's been a while. Not gonna lie.
All right.
Good fucking movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie. No, John, I gotta imagine it's got to rank up there in your top 10.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things I liked about that movie was right away in the very beginning of it, the way he picks a lock is actually a real lock tool.
Really?
Real lock picking tool, yeah.
Oh. No, that's a great movie. A lot of people say, what's your favorite? And I say Midnight Run. And I don't know if it's such a subdued movie or maybe it's not notorious. And all the diehards and this and that. And I say, oh no, Midnight Run. And they're like, Midnight Run. I'm like, yeah, Robert De Niro, Charles Grodin. And I'm like, well, what's it about? I'm like, you just gotta watch it. It's a bounty hunter.
So even with fuck Trump De Niro, you still love it.
Now you had to ruin it for me now. I haven't seen the movie in years. Now I can't watch it.
I mean, that might be something to talk about is how do people like us deal with the fact that, so much of the art that we like listening to in the movies and stuff, we may not like the people in real life. They turn out to be complete opposite of the person that they portray.
I don't know. I rent it for free, or I got the DVDs from long ago. I really don't go to movies anymore. I really do not. Even the Bruce Willis movie, Death Wish.
Oh yeah, I didn't end up seeing it.
I can't because I've gone into it before, but movies are a huge investment. And as I've gotten older, the concept of sitting down and watching TV, I can't watch TV anymore. I can't. Not because there's nothing good on. You could find something that you like, but there is so much other stuff I'd rather be doing. So much other stuff that's more important. I cannot sit and waste. I kind of look at it now, like when I was a little kid, like, oh my gosh, how did you waste so much time? But even the movies that I want to go see, I can't because I was just like, no, it's got to be really like the only one I felt there are two movies in the most recent past I felt compelled to go see. One was what's it called? Affinity Wars. And before that one, it was the new British movie, Secret Agent Kid. He's 12 years old. He's got glasses. The guys with the glasses, the British guys with the glasses, the umbrellas that shoot guns. What was it? Oh
yeah, the Kingsman.
Yeah. Those are the only, and even Bruce Willis, who was like, my God, like, oh my God, he's the God Almighty. I just don't care. I'm like, it's a movie. Oh, I got to get up. I got to go see it. And no. I don't want to see it.
But how do you, back to the question, back to TJ's question, how do you, I guess from my perspective, it's kind of like the liberals and leftists have always existed in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And I guess it's whether the art itself is leftist, the kind of the way that I look at it. I just went and saw The Incredibles with my family, The Incredibles 2. And I was going into it going, oh no, it's about the wife being the
woman,
the working mom, and the dad staying at home. It's going to hit way too close to home here, and it's going to be full of cliches and all that kind of stuff. And it ended up not being that bad. It ended up being it wasn't what I was expecting. So I guess that's how I deal with it. Is it's more. I mean, if I'm trying to think, would I go see a De Niro movie now after he's been behaving the way that he's been behaving? Probably not. But there are other people that I know are probably Democrats, but they just don't wear it on their fucking sleeve like some of these idiots do.
I think that's the thing. I really don't care what their personal views are in their private life, and I respect people who are good enough to or who are mature enough to understand that not everybody shares their views, and that's not why they're famous. They're famous because they're really good at portraying. They're good at acting. They're good at their craft, and they want to talk about that instead of politics. To be honest, I'm not even a big fan of conservative or right wing actors talking about that stuff because I feel like it just distracts from the art of what they're doing, and I want to be able to enjoy a movie without. I just don't like the politics getting involved in a movie. I enjoy watching movies that kind of go beyond that because part of the beauty of old Hollywood was the escapism. You're able to watch a movie and just get away from everything, and I don't know. I know Cappy's.
No, I agree with it. No, I'm not. I'm 100% with you. Like one of my favorite actors, Johnny Depp, which you may not like personally, maybe a leftist and all that. He's a spectacular actor, and he has more or less kept his leftist dick out of the movie Pie. When he could play a pirate or whatever he wants. And DT, your namesake there, Kurt Russell, he's a right winger. A lot of these guys, especially the guys on the right, except maybe Clint Eastwood, they keep to themselves about.
They don't wear it on their sleeve. No,
they don't. And I can forgive a Johnny Depp. Robert De Niro is a spectacular actor. I'm sure one of my favorite actors, who's unfortunately now dead, Philip Seymour Hoffman. I'm sure he was a lefty, but he's dead now, so I guess we'll never know. For the most part, if you just keep it to yourself, fine. And I'm even now, because it's the new normal. If you got to talk about how much you hate Trump because he's renting that free space in your brain for free for so long, or it's bothering you that much, fine, do it on your own time. I cannot stand a movie where I'm lectured and sermoned. And that's what's really put me off. So it doesn't even matter if the movie or the actors or the actresses are leftist or rightist. It's just the fear of having a Ghostbusters, feminist Ghostbusters, or a Mad Max feminist, or any other kind. Even what was it? What was the Justice League with Batman and Wonder Woman? Any of you guys see that one?
Yeah, that's pretty awful.
Wasn't that bad. I didn't mind it. I was like, okay. It's all no. I'm sorry, not Justice League. Wonder Woman.
Yeah, Wonder Woman was good. I thought Wonder Woman was good. Yeah,
little slow, little drawn out, but a solid build-up movie to establishing the character of Wonder Woman. I thought it was a little sappy and this is not right, and I'm in love, and Chris Pratt, you're so handsome. Not Chris Pratt. Who is the love interest? Who's the?
I can't remember his name. Yeah.
Chris Pine. Chris
Pine.
Yeah, Chris Pine, the new Captain Kirk. And everything's going great. Everything's going wonderful. And then for whatever reason, they got this American Indian guy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you haven't had your white stolen you from like the white man. I'm like, oh, fuck you. Fuck you. It's World War I. What in fuck's name is an Indian guy talking politics? Fuck you. It's over. It's over. You're like,
yeah. This is just me being a historical nerd. I actually know that Native Americans were disproportionately put in certain military roles during World War I because they were considered to be very good at special forces types. Yeah, they were considered really good at scouting.
Okay,
it was a stereotype.
Let's make a movie about that. And then you know what? You got every right to bitch and whine. You got every right to give a speech about the white man then.
Right.
That's usually how it happens, though. Is it's some just joke out of nowhere. I mean, you'll be loving the movie, and then all of a sudden, bam, there'll be some joke, and it's like, oh, why'd you have to do that?
Well, it was like going back to the whole Last Jedi thing. And what's funny is that movie really didn't suffer financially for all the just total titanic disaster that it was. But what happened is it came to impact the Solo movie, which, from what I understand from people who've actually seen it, actually thought it was a pretty decent film. And so, but it's caused, I don't know if you've read, but they basically had some sort of secret meeting in Disney trying to figure out who to replace Kennedy with, the woman who's been heading up the whole Star Wars thing, and nobody knows what to do because they kind of know that the franchise has been killed. And it was like this weird aftermath where Last Jedi comes out, everybody goes sees it, smashes, it makes a lot of money, but then later on it starts just killing the franchise to where they don't want to make any new movies because they put such random politics into it instead of just trying to make a good Star Wars film.
I think somebody's going to do an edit of The Last Jedi because there's a lot of good stuff there. I actually liked it because I'm sort of a nihilist, so I like the whole this war never ends. I mean, what's the fucking point? Luke throwing the lightsaber over his shoulder. I like all that kind of stuff. Somebody will do an edit of that movie. They'll do like the cut it should have been. They'll get rid of half of the movie. They'll get rid of the whole side quest thing. They'll get rid of that whole thing. And they'll somehow, the purple-haired lady, they'll color her hair digitally so that it's not purple.
Well,
and then it'll be like, hey, it's not too bad.
They could have made it a great film when they one, you replace some of the actors or actresses, and then two, you take them to that one planet where it's all gambling and stuff like that. I was half expecting Lando or some sort of Lando Calrissian type character to come in, and that's where the film could have been actually kind of interesting, where they could have actually salvaged part of this film. But what was funny is if you watch the movie, Mark Hamill clearly is just walking around like he just hates being there and he doesn't want to do it.
Oh,
yeah, and what's funny is what's amazing is he was being interviewed when he came out of the movie theater. Somebody was interviewed, like somebody's done this on YouTube where they've done all the recorded transcripts of or video clips of him, and they said, "So tell us what about this film that we should all know?" And he goes, "It's the longest." then one time he was bad mouthing the film during some interview, and he paused and said, "And now I just realized that I'm being recorded."
I was thinking that he should have committed. I mean, the only way, in my opinion, to save that film, I mean, I actually turned it off, was for him to commit seppuku with his lightsaber.
Yeah.
Wow.
Himself.
Well, he basically did that.
So, all right.
But Aaron's point about the movies, I agree with. I go to a movie in the theater maybe on average, about once every 3 years.
It's horrible. I got shit going on. I have more important crap than to sit there. And the movies, it's not that they've gotten so bad, but the slightest sprinkling of politics. I went to church long enough. I don't need to pay money to go to church and get lectured or sermonized about anything. And what kind of irks me is I got a buddy of mine. DT, you ever meet my buddy Richard, Tall Richard?
I think so, yeah.
And
he's got the two little kids.
Yeah, he's got the two. Yep, exactly. He happens to be a black gentleman. And he went to see Black Panther, and he's more conservative than I am. I say, is it worth seeing? And he's like, yeah, it was a good movie. I say, no politics. I'm not going to get like some dildo that's got like vegetable oil about that he shoved up my ass. And he's like, no,
how is that politics exactly?
Well, no, but that's my whole point is the left in this sense has completely screwed itself very much in the way that Trump got elected, in that they have always shoved politics where it doesn't belong. And they have actually scared away or disgusted or just made guys like me where it's like, there's a chance. It's, I'm already on the edge. I'm already on the fence whether I'm going to invest the time and money to go to see this thing. And now you could have a very good movie like Black Panther, which by all means and measures, I guess, is a very good movie. Everybody liked it. And it wasn't political. And I'm like, nope, don't care. Don't care. You've already convinced me. And the same thing with the Star Wars movie is, I don't know if you guys ever listened to, what's the name of it? World Class Bullshitters. You guys ever tune into those guys?
I've heard about it.
Yeah. You get your geek on and they're like very experts at Star Wars. And they loathe and detest what Kathleen Schmidt, what's Kathleen,
Kennedy.
Star Wars chick?
Kathleen Kennedy.
Kathleen Kennedy.
Is a producer.
They loathe and detest her. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? That's enough for me. I figured it out. I'm not going to go see it. And I'm kind of
fair. She's been at it for a while, though. My kids were just watching Back to the Future. Great series, right? Back to the Future, the trilogy.
Yeah.
And she was a producer on that. I'm like, holy shit, I didn't realize that she was involved in that way back then. So it's not like, I don't think she's like a diversity hire. I think she's been at it for a while, but clearly she's not pointed it in the right direction.
I think with Star Wars, it was cargo cult thinking where they got something, they got like that lightning in the bottle or whatever you call it with the Star Wars films, the original ones, especially with Empire Strikes Back. And then they kept trying to replicate it ever since. And even I think George Lucas didn't realize what made those films great. And the same thing with I think Back to the Future films were actually done better. What was, if you watch Back to the Future, there's no politics in those movies either. It's just pure, almost if nothing else, just a philosophical film about, time travel and the ethics around that, and whether you should change the past or even when you have knowledge of it.
And the 50s were portrayed as great. I mean,
talk about films that you could have made that would have been fascinating if they had done a Back to the Future remake, and it would have been a legitimate reason to make a remake where you set it in 2015 and the kid goes back to 1985. And think about all the changes there. So you could have that's an opportunity when you can actually make a good remake and just show, wow, it's been 30 years since a film about going back 30 years has been, or something like that. And then you could just show how different it is. It'd be a fun way for millennial kids to get to know more about what their parents were doing in the 80s when they were growing up.
Well, they sort of did that with It, how they changed it from the book. The book was the kids were in the 50s, and the movie, they're in the 80s.
Really?
What car would they use if they did what? I mean, it's kind of a good idea, TJ. What car would they use to go back to 1985?
It's funny. What would be funny is if they went back in time in a really ugly but highly fuel efficient car, right. And of course, back in the 80s, they're driving some. I'm trying to think of an 80s car that was like the iconic, but they're
Camaro.
An
IROC.
IROC, yeah, there we go.
Something like that.
That's an 80s car.
Yeah, there was that movie, I can't remember it, Hot Tub Time Machine. It was
Hot Tub Time Machine.
Yeah, it was a really stupid film, but I think it was a little crass for my taste, but it really got to the whole 80s stuff. Like they had the Walkman, there was no internet, there was still the Cold War going. Oh, that's another thing. Nowadays the whole politics of the Russia, like tension with Russia, has completely changed. So you go back then, it's a completely different group of people worried about the Russians, right?
Yep.
I miss the Russians. That was like a rival. We had hey, you know what? Yeah, you don't have to be salutatory or valedictory, but by God, we had to fight the Russians. The Russians are coming in. You better be on your game. Now there's nobody. Nobody keeps this basic level of competition and spirit
I think the Democrats, the thing about the 80s was the Democrats liked the Russians back then, because they were communists.
Mm-hmm.
But now that they're nationalists, they hate them. So now there's the whole Russian conspiracy thing.
That's been the weirdest thing to watch in my lifetime, because I was born right on the coattails of the end of the Cold War. So I grew up in the 90s. But I remember reading about that period and how movies like Red Dawn, that were having the Russians invade and commit atrocities, was considered right-wing propaganda because it was by John Millis and all this other stuff. And then you see that the people completely changing in terms of who's, they're talking about Russian meddling in our elections and all this other stuff. But it's amazing to see. This is the kind of rhetoric we were hearing from the right back in the 50s and 60s. And then of course the left was saying that they were just being scaremongers and there's nothing to worry about and all that other stuff. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of another example of where friend enemy flips so fast. And then there was that game that I actually loved playing when I was a kid called Freedom Fighters, which is where you're a guerrilla fighter in New York City. You're an American citizen. The Soviets have invaded. And that film was actually, or not, video game was controversial a little bit, not too much, but because it was seen as being kind of right wing, which nowadays I wonder if they just re-released it with some updated graphics, it'd be bought by a lot of left wingers.
What year was that? Did that come out?
It came out in 2003.
Guerrilla Fighter?
It was called Freedom Fighters. It was about you basically like a third person, squad based game where you go around and you're fighting in different boroughs in New York. But it's about a Soviet invasion, kind of like Red Dawn, except it's in the city.
Man, I miss the Russians for two things. One, you always had the common enemy, like, the Russians, the commies. And then there was always hot Russian communists. Always the hot Rush, like, she's
Natasha
forbidden.
on the top, right?
Yeah, she's forbidden. Verboten. You can't. I can't wait to sleep with the enemy. That'd be naughty. It'd be even worse than sleeping with a Catholic, according to my father.
The spy who loved me.
Yeah. Stallone is on the Russian thing again. Stallone just saw a trailer for Creed 2, the next, of the Rocky / Creed franchise, and Apollo Creed's son is going to take on Ivan Drago's son. Oh, yep.
If he dies, he dies.
Dramatic.
Wow. Hey, did you
Russians
guys
are back as bad guys?
Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat.
Hey, did you guys hear the whole thing? What was it? Drago was suicidal up until about a year or two ago, and then he's come out and he's done these. I think he did a TED talk on
Dolph Lundgren. You're talking about
Dolph Lundgren. Yeah, he said
but he's mowing his lawn so fast. I mean, what's his problem?
Huh? What?
Yeah, the commercials that he's in for mowing lawns.
The guy was daily contemplating suicide. I mean, so he was in this deep depression. I never knew about it, but that was interesting. I read a research study. We were talking about Russia and the U.S., and it was saying that during the Cold War and having that common enemy actually was a good thing. I mean, to have for competition and to benchmark and things like that, and people. They were looking at other wars and other countries that were at war, and then they would go back and ask after they weren't at war with this common enemy for so many years. People be like, "Yeah, that was actually a pretty good time," even though, of course, there was death and all of that. Right. They said it was really unifying, and we were really focused, and they kind of they longed for it.
Is what you said. It's kind of like I'm thinking about the Russians. My memory is when I was really young. I don't know, it was 10 or something when we beat the Russians at the in hockey at the Olympics.
Oh yeah, 1980, yeah.
Yeah, and that was something. I mean, they made that movie a miracle about that. It was a great film.
I remember when I was about that same time, there was some kid, like an elementary kid, who wrote to. I don't know who the hell was Gorbachev at the time. Yeah. He's like, I'd like to come to Russia. I've heard all of these bad things. And of course, Russia rolled out the red carpet and took this kid to the, every tourist attraction and made it up.
Hot Russian chicks?
Yeah, probably. He's 10 or 12. And I'm thinking though, I'm like, because I was about the same age. I'm like, holy shit, I'd be freaked out. I'd be scared to go over because, what would happen and stuff like this. So I was just living on the edge, kind of getting these little feedback. It was like a PBS type thing. If they invited this kid over and then showed him all of the great things, in Russia, then brought him back. But I don't know. I mean, I love the Hunt for Red October. I remember.
Oh yeah, my dad's favorite movie.
Oh God, and reading the
Sean
book.
Connery is a Russian.
Yeah, Sean. Yeah, and then they just hired guys, who kind of looked Russian or spoke some Russian to be the villain.
How do you look Russian? What's the you got the striped shirt if you're over in the Navy?
And so
Russians have a distinct look.
They just put them in.
I it's funny, David, you mentioned that. I think that there's a real case to be made for that having an enemy, even if you never attack them, but just it gives people an identity and a purpose in life. We live to, protect us from that. It's almost like a tribal thing and an extension of just back in the day, for centuries, millennia before, where constant warfare. Even during the medieval times, where warfare was ongoing constantly. That's half the reason that they came up with that code of chivalry within Europe was to get all these different kingdoms to actually have a system where they wouldn't be butchering each other like barbarians. And so I wonder if that's just an extension of that. And so for us to be in a period of such relative peace, and I say relatively because there's still conflicts going on in the world, but it's unknown in human history to have this much of the world at peace, where there's not warfare, where we don't have to worry about, like we're looking around right now, and I was thinking about this a while ago, like who is like like who's the end? How do you separate us from them? And I understand that it's not good to do that on one sense, because you don't want to like create artificial enemies on that way, but there's a downside to it. And I think that's why everybody really attaches themselves to certain periods in American history where everybody was united, because they had a common enemy. And common enemies unite people and get them to stop fighting over every little thing. Kind of like what we saw temporarily after 9/11, where just suddenly, I think that's the last time we'll ever see that in our lifetime, where the country just dropped everything and was focused on one thing, and that was, dealing with
a day until they all said George Bush was a warmonger.
Right.
I think the left sat on the toilet.
It really started to get bad. I just remember when I was a kid, it really started to get bad, during the buildup for the Iraq War. But during the initial part of the Afghanistan campaign, it was, the country, we just weren't hearing about the kind of stuff. Instead, it was all about, people being patriotic, waving American flags and talking about how great this country is and how we need to, just back each other up. And these are
TJ, you remember like Pat Tillman, the football player? He was killed in Afghanistan. He gave up like a multi-million-dollar contract to
Arizona Cardinals.
To go serve. I think he went special forces. I could be wrong in that. Somebody could look it up for me. But people like that who, it was kind of a throwback to World War II, where everybody went, in like Korea and Vietnam and everything like that. Everybody was like trying to get out of going off to fight. Where in World War II, here's an interesting anecdote. Most people don't know this. JFK failed. The reason he went to the Navy was he failed the physical to get into the Army. And his father bribed a doctor so he'd get into the Navy.
Right.
So, I mean, when Joe Kennedy, his dad, Joe Kennedy Sr., he had, huge amounts of money. He could have got his kids out of it, but he made sure that, Joe Jr. went, and JFK, both of them served in combat. Joe, everybody knows about JFK PT 109, and he got that. That's where he got that back injury that halted him until the day he died. And then after
Marilyn Monroe took care of him. That's what.
I'm sorry.
I said, yeah, that poor bastard. And Marilyn Monroe took care of that back injury. That poor
I'm sure she massaged it out of him. But what an interesting thing interesting enough, his winning the award after, he's saving his crew after his ship was torpedoed, was the reason that his older brother Joe volunteered for a practical suicide mission, a surveillance mission. And his plane was lost, presumably shot down. He was never seen from again, and because it was the first time ever that John outshined his older brother Joe, who was apparently 10 times better looking and more charismatic than JFK.
Wow! Didn't a lot of those Kennedy boys die? I mean, one guy died in
all except the bad one.
Oh yeah! Oh shit! Oh, that fucking piece of shit.
Yeah, Joe died.
Because we all hate
Robert,
we hate women here. What was his name?
Ted Kennedy?
Ted. Oh, that piece of shit.
Yeah, even a brain tumor. Like, I was like, would you just fucking die already, you piece of shit?
Him and McCain.
John, you're bringing up a really interesting point that I've thought about when people are talking about past politicians or political leaders and whatever. And you go back throughout history, especially in our country and wherever, where you had political leaders who joined and took part in on the lines fighting, like Teddy Roosevelt. I don't agree with a lot of Teddy Roosevelt's politics, but the guy resigned this cushy position in the Navy to go fight in the Spanish-American War and charged up the San Juan Hill. The guy could have just sat behind a desk, but he was so I would just say fearless. Like, the guy had either he didn't have a fearful bone in his body, or he had an amazing amount of courage, but he guys who did that kind of stuff. And then if you go back throughout history, you have guys like Julius Caesar. He wasn't dictating these orders for his legions to go conquer Gaul. He was there with them, life or death. He was fighting alongside them against the Gallic tribes. And then you see like George Washington and these other leaders who are actual fighters. Whereas now, I think the problem is you have a lot of guys who couldn't take a punch to the face without crying, and then they want to be in charge of our foreign policy.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, it's interesting.
I agree also.
I had to throw back all the way to Caesar because it's true. Julius Caesar, like he was, they almost lost the campaign when they had Vercingetorix under siege at that town. The Roman lines were about to collapse until Julius Caesar rode out there on his horse and rallied the troops because they were being attacked on both sides. You had the Gauls coming down from the mountain, and you had the other ones coming from the other sides. They had them sandwiched in between. They had breaks in their lines, and they saw Julius Caesar out there fighting hand to hand, and the troops just rallied and saved the day.
Right. And the same thing with I think that's also when going back to the whole military service thing. I think that's the other problem that our country's had is after World War II, you had a huge segment of the population, and especially among the male population, that had a collective historical experience. They had all gone through the same, maybe they all hadn't been in combat roles, but a lot of them had seen action, and so they could relate to one another. If you're a guy who's fought in the Pacific and you run into a guy at the bar who fought at Peleliu and you were at Okinawa, you immediately, within 5 seconds, you don't have to waste any time getting to know that guy because you already know him because you went through the exact same thing. And I think that's one of the problems that we're also seeing in our society today is it takes so much time to get to know somebody because you have so little in common. You didn't go to the same schools. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just going to say, when you're done with this, Cappy, I think this would be a great time for you to jump in with that Buzz Aldrin piece you did, where Buzz had a hard time associating with people because they hadn't had the same experiences as he did.
Yeah,
so,
But
TJ, if you, because I think that was something Cappy did on Return of Kings a couple of years ago. But I think it'll blend in really well when you're done.
Yeah. You just think about, I think it's one of the difficulties that people are having now is there's not that that's what national identity and national experience gives people, is it gives them a sense of cohesion. Whereas now I think people are just struggling to say, what do I have in common with people around me? But we'll segue into what Cappy was going to talk about.
Oh, well, I about the only thing I could say is that we have had such a enormous amount of government largesse and economic ease. Now, keep in mind, the economy hasn't been growing. It only grows at about 60% of what it used to. So the economy is slowing down, but we have decided to spend so much money and run up such a deficit that there is no hardship anymore. And especially when it comes to men, I believe it's hardship and perseverance. Like the people I most closely associate, not to sound gay or emotional, but emotionally with the people I most associate emotionally with and bond with the greatest, was back during the toughest parts of my days, and that was working security. And you guys may all laugh, oh, ha, ha, campus cop. No, this was hardcore serious shit. We were way more professional than the vast majority of campus cops but police departments out there. We were working sometimes, God almighty, I was doing 100, 110-hour work weeks. We'd have to patrol in the most horrible of weather conditions. This wasn't war. We weren't getting shot at. But, sometimes there'd be showdowns and you'd be outnumbered, with drunk frat boys or dude bros coming from the bars and all that. So there was this bonding, camaraderie, hardship. Hardship is, you could even say the same thing. Non-war would be, say, the Great Depression. It's something that you went through and you didn't have to be there with the guy, but I could almost tell you, like, if you ever worked at a SSD, the Security Services Division over at SSD, over at the U of M, unless it got really pansy, which could have happened in recent, or you were in the Army, or you were a cop, or you had endured, you could even say Cuban exiles, something that is, I went to a concert, it was great. That's not as bonding as this hardship and this pain, the band of brothers type of thing. Not to put my security experiences anywhere near that, but it has to be this pain or this challenge you overcame that you're like, yeah, I went through that hardship, that flame, that furnace forged me in a certain way that you also went through, and that you can associate with. And then that then would probably lead towards something such as not nationalism, but a patriotism or a pride in your country, or something that you went through.
It's just loyalty.
Well, some sort. I mean, I always go back to tribalism, like that. What you were just talking about reminded me. I have a friend of mine that is a deputy, a King County deputy here, where I live, and he was a cop briefly, and then he became a lawyer. Very bright guy, and criminal defense attorney, and for years, and then had his own practice. I mean, wasn't just like work for someone else. He was his own attorney. He had several associates working under him, but he still worked part-time as a deputy in, I don't know, some small municipality in Washington. I forget where it was. And he gave all that up, did a lateral transfer to, King County, where the action is. That's King County is Seattle is inside King County.
Right. That's where the heroin epidemic. Yeah. The heroin.
And
right.
So what I was going to say, he gave all that up because he so missed the brotherhood of being in the police department. He, despite, he was making good cash, he loved what he did. He didn't really like being an attorney. I met almost no one who's an attorney that actually enjoys it. Attorneys are some of the most miserable. And I used to have to work for these people work with them all the time. They're miserable fucking people for the most part. But he just gave all that up because he missed that kind of what you were just talking about, like that sense of brotherhood, that fraternity. Yeah. And that's what's so missing today among men. I mean, that's kind of why we're doing this, isn't it? Like for the younger guys coming up, to try to find, help them out in ways to, that's one aspect of it is finding a tribe, finding a brotherhood, finding something to, you need your baptism in fire, whether it was, working security like you did, or, being in the military, or fucking going to high school in the Bronx, whatever it was,
I mean, it's vital. Because you don't realize it at the time. I mean, especially when you're a young kid, you have no context. There's no context. And you also lack the experiences. And one of the worst things that happened to me is when I was working security, I thought that was normal. Like there would always be, I took them for granted. Like here are these, what in hindsight now was spectacular, superior people. I don't know what the selection bias was, but these people were off the charts in terms of IQ, personality, charisma, intelligence, everything. And I thought, oh, this is average. This is normal. And that is the number one thing I miss in life. And a lot of the reason why I recommend pretty much all my clients, if they're asking about career or something, I say, join the fucking military. Because you're not, but it's going to suck. I'm going to have to do push-ups. I'm like, dude, you're going to be begging and pleading at 40, 50, 55 to do push-ups with a group of people, because that camaraderie, that brotherhood just doesn't exist, not anywhere else. And I think men need that because we were through evolution and all that. You need that. I mean, DT, how many times have I tried to get the crew together? I mean, you got your family and your friend. I always give you, I bust your balls for it and whatnot. But how many times I'm like, hey, we're doing this, or hey, we're doing that, and it
happens often. Yeah.
It's if there's one thing I could convey to younger, and this is why TJ, I keep saying, dude, man, go join the National Guard, or at least your local police force.
So let's talk about that for a second, because it came to mind that this is one of the reasons that people have advocated for reinstituting the draft, or having some sort of required military service like in Switzerland. And so I got two thoughts on that. One, I understand some of the arguments that they're making. They're trying to create cohesion. They're trying to create get people to have the kind of experience that we're talking about, where it's going to give people commonality. And I think it would smooth over, or at least the argument would be that it would smooth over a lot of the tensions in this country, because people would then be able to empathize with each other, and they wouldn't just be strangers. You'd bring, I mean, kind of like with Band of Brothers, you brought guys from all different walks of life and different parts of the country, and then they suddenly found something in common, so they're going to be more willing to see each other as countrymen. For political reasons, I don't share the view of having that requirement. But the one thing I would add to that, though, is The intent is fine, but the politics that are going on right now, it's not about that they going into those institutions now. The purpose of those institutions, practically speaking, are not for our well-being, because they're now using them as social experiments. The military is not about winning wars anymore. It's not about doing all this different stuff. They're using it to just play around. They're basically LARPing is what they're doing, and it's putting men who are able to do the job in danger. That's kind of my thought on that. I don't know. The problem is we're reading about what's going on in the news. I don't know how rampant that stuff is in the military, but that's, I think, one of the things that always dissuaded me from joining is I didn't trust that the mission of these institutions would be what I'd grown up believing they were.
So, well, I have a buddy of mine that he's a full colonel in the Air Force, and he right now is he's figured out that he's not gonna make general. There's a lot of politics to get to that level, to get your star, as they call. I mean, even just to get past lieutenant colonel is a big deal, but he's thinking about he can retire. He's got like within another year if he wants to, but he could also stay in for I forget how long. But his big concern is that he's spent his entire adult life in the military, and this guy really worked his way on up. He went in as an enlisted guy, and then applied to the academy and all that.
He's a Mustang, eh?
Yeah, he's a great guy. I knew him, been friends with him since I was in 7th grade. And I'm still friends with him. Actually, we had a huge. We don't get to talk too often because the guy just got back from Syria. But yeah, no, this guy's been a lot. I mean, he's done a lot of shit, man. But can't even talk about it half the time. But he was saying that his big reservation about leaving, even he has all jobs lined up. They sent him to school. He's got his master's degree and all sorts of shit. And plus, the amount of operational experience he has in the military is, I don't know how many wars or conflicts he's been in, but he could make so much more money. But he says, I don't know if I could deal with, the lack of, the civilian bullshit. I don't think I could handle it because I'm so programmed to, have this sense of this fraternal order.
I think the only way a mandatory service would work. Well, one, it depends on who's running the military. And that would be the,
Right.
Are the Democrats running it, or are more people right of center running it? And it's actually, like you're talking about, the mission is clear. But I think what would probably happen is that all the leftists would say, well, it just needs to be some kind of service. And so and maybe this would be a good thing. You'd have all the right-leaning people joining the military, and then you'd have all the left-leaning people like ladling soup at soup kitchens or whatever, and we kind of divide into our two little groups like we do already.
So guys, how about like the CCC though? So this is one thing. I just got back from South Dakota, did Wind Cave, thanks Cappy. But I remember, Wind Cave at the start, it said this was a CCC project, but that was something too where the Civil Conservation Corps, when it was really the Civil Conservation Corps in the 30s and 40s, not the watered down bullshit it is today. But so there's this vesting. I think that's the other part, is people don't have a vesting in America. They haven't contributed to building part of whatever, which is infrastructure, and that's missing. And I think there's value in that, and a great need for that. And people just don't have that vesting. And I have two short experiences which kind of get to some left-wing stuff on this South Dakota trip, which I think are hilarious. Maybe they're not, but before the show's done, I'd just like to talk about quickly. But I just got done literally like an hour ago doing concrete, taking out concrete, putting in concrete. And it was just me. It's a 3-day project, but I was using tools from my great-grandfather. So, like old chisels and shit like that. So there was kind of almost this lineal unilateral bonding and that sweat equity. I mean, it's my own house, my own property, and stuff like that. But again, I think too, you can have some of that where you're linking to your own heritage, even if it's a unilateral experience by doing some of these things. Right. But the CCC though, I'm going to Wind Cave was just one example, and there's so many around us of CCC projects. And we can even tie that back. What if there was some credit that was given to I mean, if you're not paying off your student loans, it's like, well, here, if you enroll and do whatever in CCC, you get some credit toward that.
I was going to go straight there, Dave. They do that already. I think student loans, if you, it's not as good as you're saying. If you work for government, there's some jobs, if you come out of school and you work for government for a few years, they forgive your debt. And so I think if you took that idea further and had these people actually, go to the national parks and clean them up, or go build a trail, or go help build another, for bathrooms or whatever, just have them go do something to get their loans forgiven or whatever. Yeah.
But I think the problem with what TJ was kind of hinting at, I think, was that these organizations don't have that same kind of camaraderie anymore, because they're all been invaded by leftists. Look at the Boy Scouts.
And that was exactly what I was thinking, was the Boy Scouts.
Oh, yeah, look at the Boy Scouts. They destroyed that, and even in the military, like the officer I was telling you about, he's talking about they have to deal with the transsexuals now. There's transsexuals have to be admitted to the military. The Supreme Court said so. So it's to the point now where we have to create our own types of organizations, because the ones that our fathers and our grandfathers used, those have been corrupted.
Yeah, and they have for a long time. I mean, the submariners, the submariners, whatever. Guys and girls go on the submarine, they come off pregnant. I mean, it's been happening for a long time.
I think that's the existential crisis that we're facing as men, is that all the institutions that we grew up to cherish and the depiction that we had was from another era, and they no longer resemble that, whether it's the Boy Scouts, whether it's the military, whether it's any kind of organization. And so we're faced with a situation where we have to, like John was saying, we have to build our own stuff. We got to start from scratch. We kind of have to establish our own identities or spaces, because we can't go join stuff anymore, because I guarantee you, if it hasn't happened already, it's going to happen very, very soon. And I've seen this with so many organizations that have been where I was wanting to join, but I just saw the signs of degradation, where it was no longer about the mission or the original purpose. It was now changing over to other kinds of stuff. And so that's the problem with wanting to join the military now, the National Guard or whatever. You're in a situation where you're going to be put in a situation that causes you to violate. It's not even about the purpose of the military, whether it's to protect American interests or whatever. Aside from that, but just as a man, where you're in a situation where you're expected to conform to values that go against your own personal code of honor or virtue.
Let me jump in there. So the Weinberger Doctrine, Defense Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger in 1984 created the rules for use of the military. And basically it was, if there were conditions, but it was basically if we're attacked, because what was happening was Weinberger was seeing that there was a push. CNN went online 24 hours in 1980, and very shortly after were showing a lot of these humanitarian conflicts. And then the Democrats were putting a lot of pressure on the president, and then also, to have military action to, deliver problems. Intervene in these things. And Weinberger's like, oh, we don't want to go there. And it was so manipulated too, because they would show one city in Africa where things were kind of gone to hell for 2 days and film it while everything else was good. This planet works. But the Weinberger said, no, we can only, but they broke that doctrine. They basically, it was in place for a little while, and then they went, the military largely became this humanitarian conduit for all of these things, which weren't really authentically happening on this global widespread scale. These were very isolated, and we should not have been putting people at risk. I mean, it should have. So yeah, the Weinberg, as you were saying, TJ, it was, Caspar Weinberger in 84 saw this happening, saw the military shifting from kind of, us largely, the military protecting us against invasion by, Russia or some military action or something like that.
Hot Russian chicks. Let's paint a silver lining to that cloud.
Why are we arguing this invasion of hot Russian chicks? I don't know. But
it's Cappy.
what was it? Yeah, is this like a Rick and Morty? Are we flipping
Just let me have my dream, Doc. Just let me have my dream.
No, I like it.
Hot Russian chicks in heels and AK-47s.
Oh my gosh.
Well, that's what Weinberger was for. He had posters up all over.
Open,
His whole
open
damn
borders
office.
for cuties.
His office pictures were all over his desk like that. Have you guys not seen this?
What, Casper
but-
Weinberger? What?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
the
he
guy
was
was in
for-
the Russian chicks.
Well, who was it? Name me one guy out there who's like anti-hot Russian chicks. Name me one guy who's like not, straight, not some fucked in the head leftard that,
He's probably the same guy from like Doctor Strangelove who thinks that they're, part of a
damn it.
a communist conspiracy to impurify our precious bodily fluids.
Do I have to read a book? What's Doctor Strangelove?
It's a movie.
Is he kidding me?
It's a movie?
Oh, he's kidding,
Oh
right?
my
He's
God.
joking.
What?
Kevin, you have not seen Doctor Strangelove?
No, I haven't seen
Aaron,
Dr.
oh my
All
God.
right, Buck, I'm hanging up, man. He
All
didn't
right,
say
all
anything.
right, all
We're
right,
done with this
all right.
podcast.
Hang
All right,
on.
we have to
Here's-
got to get a television set to Aaron.
Here's my Doctor Strangelove. Is this a book that was?
Oh my gosh.
Oh man,
It was a
we're not
play.
going to spend the time educating you. You're gonna,
Look at you guys. They're such.
It
They're
was-
such.
Hey,
disgusting-
all you youngsters listening, don't be this guy.
Oh,
We got the guy who just grew pubes last week lecturing me about.
You mean the guy with the
until he
beard?
pissed out of it. But yeah,
Wow, this is so condemning and so universal. Now I almost feel like I have to go see this. What is it about? Is this like Dark?
no, we're not telling you
We're
what
not
it's about.
you have to see
You
it.
got to watch it, Aaron. Okay, put the effort in. Put the thing in the DVD player and press play.
Oh my god!
oh my,
And when the doc is like shaking his head, then you know you have to have
Wow.
shame. Like I ever tell you guys related to like the camaraderie, and there's no camaraderie in I guess there's camaraderie in this story, but did you guys ever see the piece where I met a Pacific sniper out in South Dakota? Doc, you may have even driven through the town when you're out there. Buffalo Gap, South Dakota, south of Hermosa, south of Rapid.
yeah, I don't know if I drove
No,
through it or not, but
no, there was out in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota, south of Rapid City, on your way down to Hot Springs. There's this little town called Buffalo Gap, and there was this bartender. And Buffalo Gap only has dirt roads. There's no paved roads, and you see a sign Buffalo Gap, and there's really no reason to go there except they have the monthly barn dance. I mean, you want to talk about old school Americana? This is it. And I've attended the barn dance, and you go there, and it's all people 70 and up. And they're very happy if you show up and you're not their age. But there's a bar in town. It's called The Bar. And an old man called Lee used to run it. And Lee was in his 90s. Last I saw him, he had an oxygen tank. And he had a little bit of trouble with the Indians, which are over on Pine Ridge Reservation, which is kind of down in that area. And
right.
end up thankfully having my gun on me, but other locals were around, and we made sure that there's some drunk Indians there that were harassing him at one time, and we ended up having this conversation, and he said, "Oh, thanks," and blah blah blah. You're a good friend. I'm like, "Oh, I helped out this old man." He says, "Yeah, I used to be a sniper in the Pacific of World War II." I'm like,
amazing.
"Holy shit. This guy's got balls bigger than bowling balls." And I'm like, "Yeah, I got my little Springfield XD9 pistol here, and glad to help you out." But yeah, but I'm saying that guy went through an experience, and not to belittle the Civilian Conservation Corps or the Boy Scouts, but I think to have that kind of bonding experience we were talking about before, it can't be this, as Chris Beckloff eloquently says, McKinsey and the fuck around gang going to help like on a Christian, like all these girls that like Christian missions, like we're gonna go help. And that's something that kind of threw me for a loop. I remember all these people like, we're gonna go on a Christian mission. Where? Los Angeles. It's like, what the hell? What, really? Los Angeles? Is there a problem there? Is there starvation? Is there flooding? What's going on there?
Have you been to LA, Cappy?
I have been to LA. But these people, I mean, I've heard people like quote going on Christian missions to France,
Yeah, to the south of France.
I would love to go.
They're mostly just vacations. They're
and
going
that's
on
what it
vacation.
is.
I mean, what these people, they don't even know how to use a hammer, and they're going down to Mexico to go build some orphanage or whatever. The orphanage would much rather have the airfare than these idiots that don't know how to use
civil engineer or plumbing, right? I mean, send some tradesmen down, but
yeah, exactly.
And that's why I love the phrase McKinsey and the fuck around gang, because that's all it is. Swoop a little spoiled white girls and white boys.
Yeah.
Going to some place where they are probably a burden more.
Right.
They're going to consume more resources than they're going to put in. I remember there was this one picture of these girls, quote, in Africa, and they got a busted tire. Well, who's fixing the tire? The poor African guy, and the girls are just taking a selfie. It's like, fuck you, get your ass fucking back to Winnetka or Edina or some other fucking the Hamptons. Just get your fucking ass out here. And it just kind of, and that's not going to be this galvanizing, character building experience that of course is camaraderie, but getting shot at or putting yourself in danger, or civilian conservation corps in the olden days, not the fucking Peace Corps what it is now, but building something in the middle of the desert like the Hoover Dam, that definitely.
Oh yeah.
Cappy, I actually went on some of those trips that you were talking about back when I was a kid. So
did you get laid?
No, I'm talking about the mission trips.
Yeah, did you get laid?
Exactly. Question stands.
No, we were. That was not. No,
that was virtuous and moral. Yeah.
No, it's just I saw the problems even then with sending these kids down there, because it's almost it was there to make. I don't know. I'm trying not to speak for anybody else who might have gone on these things.
Please
but
do. We're assholes here.
Yeah. I think part of it was just to make the kids wanted to feel like they did something good. And my whole thought on that is another thing is these kids are going to areas where life is much, I would either say tougher or just very, very different. And this whole idea that we need to go fix the world's problems is, I think, lends itself to the other side of the coin, where if you can't fix the world's problems, you just bring everybody into your country.
The cliche that I hear from these kids and adults that come back, when I used to go to church, was, oh, we went down there to go change them, and they changed us. It's this kind of, it's such navel gazing. It just makes me want to vomit that you go down there and some poor starving kid, he changes your heart. Well, what about the fucking poor starving kid?
Well, I think the problem is they won't just tell kids. They can't. They don't want to touch the reason, like the adults I'm talking about here. They don't want to have a discussion, because think about it, when the kids go down there, their initial their thought is going to be, why are they in such poverty? Why is their country like this? And the adults cannot have a conversation about they don't want to get into economics and say
birth control. That's it. I solved all of Africa's problem. Right. Birth control.
Well, no, I'm just saying they don't want to talk about the differences in countries, and so but they say be appreciative of what you have here in your country. So they think that stuff, like all the wealth that I'm assuming their dad has a legitimate job and not a make work job, but it trivializes the wealth that's generated by their parents. So then they go on to high school and college, and they think this money just came out of nowhere, or that worse, their parents were not responsible at all for the wealth that they enjoy. And so, and the actions of people who came before them, like they think this stuff just comes from God. It's happenstance. They think that we just happen to have this money, and so it's not really ours, and they don't understand. They're never really taught about economics explains a lot of this stuff, but because it's not directly tied to religious stuff, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to say we're going, and I think that's the other problem, is that we're going to these countries, or at least they send these mission trips down to these countries, not based on theological issues, but based on economic issues. Well, what if these people are actually theologically better off than the people who are going into their countries to try and fix their economic problems?
They usually are.
Good point.
They usually are, actually.
I mean, I hate to say, I remember I was listening to one, I don't know if he's a missionary or whatever, but he had spent a lot of time in Africa, and he said that a lot of these African nations are much more theologically, I would say, traditional or conservative than the missionaries and the mission trips that come over. So they tell them to stop coming. Because like your theology is awful. It's based on like the whole prosperity gospel thing. And so they're like, yeah, guys, your whole theory does not work in this country. Good stuff does not always happen to good people.
It's the back to the hardship thing. I mean, the places where they're going, these people are experiencing true hardship and have to be a community to survive and have to have a cohesion amongst themselves. And so, yeah, they're going to have a leg up on all these spoiled brats that come down there as far as theology or morals or even just probably just manners, good manners, being thankful, being grateful. I mean, I guess it is sort of a training ground. Hey, yeah, we're going to show you. It's the old thing where to get your kid to eat, you go, well, don't you know there's starving kids in China or whatever? I mean, it's like that, but a lot more money to teach that lesson to your kid.
Yeah, these people are also in other countries. They're in an area where you're either you either are or you aren't. There's no you can't fake it because there's no incentive to fake it. Because if you claim to believe this kind of stuff, you're going to get shot in the head and be left to die on the side of the road. So whereas up here, people can use it. Kind of Cappy's done videos on this, but they can use it as a weapon. To control people or manipulate people emotionally, and particularly in dating or whatever. But yeah, that's where I just thought, they need to completely change that kind of like the collective experience and getting them to do stuff, but do it in a way that's healthy and that doesn't send them out. Don't send them out there when they're teenagers. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're doing. Like I had no idea what I was doing. As far like you know nothing about the world. Like go work a job.
Right.
learn about how wealth is created and learn about why is your country economically first world and other countries are third world and and all that stuff. Yeah.
Do you think there's anything out there that isn't infected by leftist bullshit? The only thing I can think of, I mean, it's like we're talking about when things are honest, when there's a clear goal and everybody's pushing in the right direction and we have to achieve this goal, because if we don't, we fail. Basically, there's no, well, we could just do it this way a little bit, let the trannies in and blah, 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 and maybe they'll be able to fight. No, there's nothing. It's kind of do or die thing. I'm just wondering if like, and you hear about the politics of NASA and all that, but those are like clear goals. I mean, is that all that's left is pushing out into space and that, the math is what it is. And it's either going to work or it's not. And I think is that the last refuge of like trying to actually accomplish something. And it's either you succeed or fail, and failure is very dramatic and catastrophic.
But look what they're doing to math already. They're already saying that logic and reason and math is. I'm not even quite sure what words they're using now.
It's sexist.
Yeah, it's sexist.
Yeah, and so
the patriarchy. Yeah.
I mean, you take that, and at some point in the future, I mean, people talk about how our military doesn't, or our country doesn't have anybody to compete against. Well, wait until there's an actual conflict, kind of like with France. I mean, think about France in World War I. It was the dominant military power. It had a better army than the English. It didn't have the greatest navy. But then you go over to World War II, and it gets defeated as quickly as Poland and the Dutch within a month because they just hadn't changed. And I think that that's going to happen to our country. We've become so soft, like physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually, where they just fold over because there's no resistance. They're not they don't deal in reality. Like they don't care. It just is kind of amazing how people will ignore reality even when it gets in the way of their supposed goals. And I'm talking about like social justice warriors' goals. It benefits them to acknowledge reality in certain areas, but they completely ignore it because for whatever reason. It's the same thing with like the math and NASA thing.
Well, you're operating, not to criticize you because you're young and hopeful, and we always were nice and naive, and you have a soul in the future.
I'm hopeful you will watch Dr. Strangelove this week.
All right, I will, but this has nothing to do with that. But same thing with McKinsey and the fuck around gang going to help out the blacks in Africa, or the social justice warriors, or this whole make work government thing and all that. You operate from the erroneous premise, and maybe you don't, I'm trying to make everybody listening understand this. Most conservatives, and not even that, most non-leftists operate from this erroneous but logical premise. Like, don't we want to solve this problem? Would we not like to solve poverty in Africa? Would we not like to close the wage gap? So there's this critical analysis, critical thought, this empiricism, like, yes, here's a problem, let us go solve it. And then you think people operate from this premise, and then maybe naively, especially on the left, think, well, just going down there and singing a song to the local natives would. I have a much darker, not opinion, but fact on humanity, because I know these people are evil scumbags. They're not even going down there on the premise of helping the poor villagers, or helping the poor, or helping the single mothers, or helping close the wage gap, whichever gaps that might be. These are lazy, despicable, evil people. And I do mean that word evil, because they have no desire or intention to actually solve the problem. They're going there for their own purposes and selfish needs. They want to feel good about themselves. They don't want to work hard. They don't want to be like a civil engineer, like some of us in the audience are. They don't want to, or the safe doc. You actually care about you. Like, hey, let's look up some statistics and whittle down the risk and dangers. Most of us here, from a fundamental premise, want to go and improve the world. These people put themselves first, and then when they see problems, they will use the military, civilian conservation corps, government spending, whatever else, so that they can feel good about themselves. But as long as there's no engineering involved, or God, let's actually dig a ditch, let's dig a well, or let's think hard, and it's never that. So these people, I'd say, whether again, it could be using the military for humanitarian purposes, which it wasn't built for. McKinsey and the fuck around gang, going to help out the poor kids in Uganda. These people have no intention of helping out these genuinely poor and in need souls. They do it because it makes them feel good, and they're first world spoiled fucks from the suburbs. That's pretty much where I.
You're absolutely right. Talk about the lowest bar.
No, Aaron, when you said that they're evil, I agree. I mean,
they are. They're evil,
despicable like Twitter people. Posts about leftists and the way to deal with them is they have to be exposed and confronted. I mean, there's nowhere left to run anymore. Okay, right. From them. I mean, we've reached the point where there's no one left to go. I mean, I don't know if we talked on air or something like that. I was talking about moving. Where would I go? It comes a point where you have to say, this line no further. Okay. Right. I'm not backing down anymore. And I think that's what we need. I mean, maybe that's the closest thing in our lifetime that we're going to come to of a problem to unite us, that we have to fight against, is the evilness of this leftism. And it is evil, and it's perpetrated by evil people. And
I call them psychotic Democrat filth. That's what I call them. John, I'm not pulling any punches anymore. They're psychotic, they're Democrats, and they're filth.
Well, John's point, I think, really hit home for me, because I ended up moving from the Seattle, and now part of that was just ideal opportunity to own a house. I definitely wasn't going to be able to buy one in the Seattle area, but I also saw it as escaping the problems there. But the problem is that a lot of those issues are coming over to my area, but also, where's there to go? You can't. We can't all be the guy alone in the wilderness in his shack. And even then, I promise you, there would be a pioneer of these people coming up to where you live just so that they could bring their views. Like the idea of somebody being outside of their control is beyond them. They will go to areas that they claim they hate just to expose the people to that kind of views.
So they're missionaries.
No. It's not. I don't think that's an exaggeration anyway. They do see themselves as missionaries, in that sense that they will dedicate their lives to the purpose of basically over their lifetime getting people exposed to these views and changing like the society and the culture. And I think that I've been thinking about a lot. What do we do? Because one, we have no power, so to speak, when you compare to other people, like political power. Nobody, I would say, really represents us in the political realm or any kind of major institutions.
Right.
I think that the options, we can hope that somebody won't hate us or want to persecute us or be overtly hostile to us. At best, they're going to be neutral, or they'll occasionally do something that's good for us that, for whatever reason, serves a political purpose. I think that our attention should be on, one, doing the best with our personal lives that we can, so that we can help out other people who are like-minded but may not have the same knowledge or resources. Kind of like what this podcast is about, trying to help people figure out how to take care of their own lives and live some sort of meaningful life in a world where if you follow the status quo, you're going to end up miserable and addicted to opioids or suicidal or just going the way that everybody else is going, and it's not a good way. It's not what we're about.
But again, TJ, this is it's why in part I have you on. Why I like you is because like I see a lot of youth and innocence, and I'm not picking on it because you're younger than me. You have this idealism. You operate from the premise that they're like missionaries, that they actually believe in their things. And somebody put it best to me about the left: they're either devils or dupes. And I'm increasingly of the opinion that these people are more devils. Now, we all know a good Democrat who has an honest soul. They're typically union Democrats. I don't know if you guys know Mary Jo. She's on the Facebook and we banter back and forth. And we give each other shit. And she's a Democrat. Why? Because she hasn't gotten past, well, they're for the little people. So, and I sent her for Christmas. Do you guys know what I sent her for Christmas in the mail?
Probably wasn't Dr. Strangelove.
No, it was. Oh, wow.
Maple syrup.
I just want to give a quick shout out to Charles Mack in the chat, who says hello to all of us. He's just joining us now.
Thank you. Thank you for Charles.
U.S. Steel's own Charles Mack.
I sent her a copy of the federal budget because it's like you're not living in math. You're not living in the real. And her boyfriend thought it was hilarious. He thought it was just absolutely hilarious.
Did you actually send her like the thousands of pages?
No. I sent like the abbreviated. No. I sent
PDF.
No, I like printed it off. I think it was like the like 2 pages of that. But I did put it in a very nice red envelope with a gold sticker on the back. It looked very Christmassy. So she thought, oh, I'm going to get something good. Like, yeah, here's the federal budget, you fucking Democrat.
Wow. Well, the question that John was posing was, what's the hill to die on? And that's how I phrase it is, there's all kinds of problems out there. And libertarians are notorious for turning molehills into mountains, right? I mean, they're willing to die on their little molehill of privatizing police or something. And just, but what, from practically speaking, we want to enjoy our life. I've got kids, I've got a family. I want to enjoy my life. What is that? You were talking about the line that you don't, this far, no farther. What is that hill to die on? And the nearest I can come to is if they ever come for the guns, that's the hill to die on, because then we truly are powerless. I mean, that's sort of the last line.
Before it gets there, what I want to do is get people on the right. Because you remember, DT, when I went and I talked to those Republicans, they are so far behind. They are so far removed from the front lines. What I want to do is get people, and TJ highlights this example, is we give them this undeserved positive assumption that they want to help out. Whereas most leftists, I'm completely convinced now, they are lazy and they want to live off of you. They're not going to spread. Like when Californians move into your town, start voting left, they don't do that because they think they have some kind of moral religion that they're spreading like Christianity. They want free shit. Period. The dreamers coming into this country, don't come here because, oh, it's dreaming and I want to be. They want free shit. Everybody overthinks these people. Everybody thinks they're like high IQs of 125 and above. They're not. They're parasites. They're humans. They're common IQs of like 85 to 100. They want free shit. Period.
I have to disagree, or at least I think that there's some nuance to this. And I was talking about this in my podcast this week. I think that what's driving a lot of the political crusades and just the sheer intensity and zealotry is the fact that we're one of the few societies in the world that has a lot of people would describe themselves as spiritual, but they're not religious. They don't adhere to any traditional religion. And traditional religions and I'm not talking about just Christianity, I'm talking about Islam, the pagan religions like the Romans and the Greeks and all that stuff. They all had a belief in an afterlife and the belief that what you did in this life had an effect on your life in the next, and that death wasn't the end of it. Well, most people today, I think, genuinely do not believe that there's anything beyond this life, whether they say that they're spiritual, whatever. And so their only paradise is going to be, for them, will be in this world. And that's why there's so much of this sheer, I don't even know how to describe it, but the hopelessness that's driving much of them. Because if they can't fulfill their vision for the world within their lifetime, it's going to be the end. Like they feel like they're operating on a limited time structure. And that's why there's such, whether it's global warming or whether it's solving poverty or if it's all this stuff, it's driving them because they don't have hope. They don't believe that they're going to, when they die, they're going to go to somewhere else. And they also don't believe that when they do something in this life, they're going to be rewarded for it in the next life.
And TJ, to build off of that, there's another way to look at that. And I think right now, lifespans have doubled in the last 150 years. And I was talking to some cryogenic scientists, and they were saying, in their perspective, it wasn't going to be that far off 50, 100 years when people would have the choice, if they had the money, to basically live, 300, 400, 500 years. You just could have body parts interchanged out and things like that. And actually, we had a deep discussion, and what they were saying is they were all for that, but they also said, this is going to create a complete loss of agency and purpose because, think about it. I mean, people would work for, you'd go to school or whatever, you'd get out, you'd work for 30, 40 years and you retire. Well, now what if, you're 25 years old and you've got 300 years ahead of you? It becomes this reverse hopelessness and this fact that you could live forever. And they said it's actually, it is kind of like this almost singularity type timeline. It's not 2042, but I mean further out, but we will hit it where if you do have the money, these things would be possible. And it's creating this, why go to church and why do these things, if the likelihood is I'm going to live forever. And
what's funny is George Soros, I assume most people know who he is, and I'm going to talk about him in as much of a dispassionate manner as possible. But this was a guy, he's a Hungarian, he was Jewish, and he's admitted in the past that he collaborated with the Nazis during World War II and basically sold out his Jewish neighbors to save his own skins. Well, now that he's about to die, he's been apparently, if I read correctly, trying to repair his reputation in after the fact, in retrospect.
Too late now.
Yeah, well, it's too late now, but I think, this is a guy who's a billionaire and who shouldn't care. But I think the other thing is that he's confronting this existential crisis, as you might describe it. He's going to die, but I think the question is he's also not taking anything with him. Like none of his money. That's another thing that I think that people are dealing with is they don't take any of the stuff that they have with them. And maybe
you should become a Viking, right, and just bury it all.
Right. Well, that's it's funny. No, the Vikings are another example of a group of people who believed in an afterlife and believed that their actions in this life corresponded to the next life.
Money.
Like the Greeks and the Romans would put money, coins in the eyes of the dead because they had to pay the toll to cross the river Styx. And with the Vikings, you would burn all that stuff. With the Egyptians, they would bury the kings and the royalty with their stuff because they believed that you needed that to have them go into the next life. So this all creates a sense of in death that it's not the end. Like it's just part of a transition into another life. And if you don't believe that, it causes you to become very fanatical about what you're doing in this life in a sense of urgency. And
outstanding observation. Go on, TJ. No, I was just pointing. Outstanding.
Yeah. And so I just was noting that. But if you notice, also these people are miserable, and you talk about why they're miserable, and I think that there's a lot of different reasons for that. But I think one of them is that they just have no hope. They don't have hope in anything. I mean.
I think hope and goals is another thing. I mean, put those two together. Hope, they don't have hope. And the other one is they don't set any goals, any type of goals for anything, even if it's going to be like, I'm going to hike the Appalachian Trail or whatever the hell it is. But all of that's off the table. And it starts, TJ, as you said, because they don't have hope. So if you don't have hope, screw it. I'm not going to set any goals for myself.
Right. And it's funny, DT, you were talking about libertarianism because I was thinking the exact same thing. I have to be careful with generalizing because I don't want to say I identify as a libertarian, but I agree with the philosophy. But as a movement, it had a lot of potential to influence the political narrative in this country. But unfortunately, it's almost like these guys, it's like Cappy and I were talking about in a previous podcast where you have a lot of hipsters. People, it's for a lot of these people, it's a hipster movement where you just sit back and be ironic about the different fights that are going on. but you don't.
Yeah, you're rebellious. You can be rebellious.
Yeah, you're rebellious, and they always like to be able to disavow being either on the left or the right. They love to say it doesn't matter which boot is on your neck and all that other stuff. But they also love to.
They're very impractical in their thinking.
I think that's the other.
As a former libertarian.
yeah. I mean, the thing is, we're probably agree on stuff like they love to talk about hypothetical situations, and then that's what they adopt their view on. Particularly with borders and immigration, where they'll say, well, in this society, this is the way it should be. Well, great. We don't live in that society.
Right. Exactly.
They don't acknowledge, and I'm generalizing here. There's guys like
priorities.
Well, yeah, like there's guys like Tom Woods. I would definitely describe him as a real, not a realist, but I'm not, this is not applying to guys like him or to guys at the Mises Institute, Jeff Dyson, all those other guys. I think those are good guys. But I mean, I'm thinking more of like the Libertarian Party and the mainstream Beltway DC libertarians, where they talk about stuff that is not. It's like they don't really want to be real. They don't want to solve the problem. They just love to take a position that doesn't put them in any moral conundrum. Because
I think they just want to be right. They've got their philosophy figured out down to the finest detail, and that's where I use the example of privatizing the police forces. You can, as a libertarian, you can talk about very big issues and make some great points about liberty and about small government and about privatization and all those things, but they're willing to carry the argument all the way down to your local fire department or whatever. Right. And that's where they lose people, is that they don't. First things first, let's solve the big problems first, right, before we start hiring Halliburton to be your local fire department.
So here's the other problem. I was going to talk about this on my podcast, but I figured I might as well bring it up here now.
Hey, I'm going to say that'll be my last statement. I got to get going. So it was good talking to you, brothers, and have a great rest of the conversation.
See you, take care, man.
See you, DT.
Say hi to Bert and Ernie for me.
I will.
Ernie and Bert.
Yeah, one of the problems, and this is, I think, with everybody, not just libertarians, is that we've substituted personal virtue with ideological purity. So if you instead of developing good personal virtues like courage, loyalty, duty, self-sacrifice, self-restraint, patience, and all these other things, people adopt views and then just say that they believe this, and that doesn't require any discipline to obtain. You just have to say it.
Virtue signaling, that's all it is.
Yeah, virtue, and that term's getting overused a lot, but they do it to virtue signal. Look at how righteous I am for holding this view, instead of talking about stuff, just going out and doing stuff. And virtue signaling doesn't require you to do anything. It's a very lazy way to
right. That's my whole point about these are evil people.
Well, I don't think it's even. I don't think it's even. But I don't even think it's evil people. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier in this podcast. People have such little in common with each other. They have to spend a lot of time getting to know the other person. And one of the ways you do that now is by virtue signaling, saying, well, this is what I believe and this is what I stand for. This is why people are on Facebook constantly posting memes and political statements and all this other stuff, because it's like that's all they have, because we can't talk about other stuff. We can't talk about the fact that because I will tolerate
hot.
If a person has a good code of personal conduct, I really am not terribly interested in whether they have the exact same views on certain political issues. I just don't care, because that's not relevant to me. If somebody's trustworthy, reliable, dependable, he keeps his word, he has a very strong sense of honor where he cares about what other men who he respects think of him, I really don't care what his politics are. And chances are his politics are probably going to be a little bit more aligned with me. But if he doesn't share the exact same views on, say, foreign policy or the war on drugs or immigration and borders, it's like, I really don't care, because that shouldn't be how we measure and form friendships, and camaraderie should not be based on our policy stances. It should be based on how we treat one another.
Well, good luck finding people.
I think that's a lesson I would say for the younger gents who may be tuning in, is that spend less time trying to figure out what the proper views are on a political issue, and focus more on improving yourself through reading classical Roman literature like Cicero or Tacitus or something like that, where they taught, or the Stoics, where you improve yourself as a man rather than spending hours trying to figure out what the appropriate moral stance is on an issue that you have no power to change, and you probably don't have all the facts because most of the information that's relevant is kept from us.
I am going to be writing a post one of these days about the amount of time wasted predominantly on the left obsessing about Donald Trump. Like, if I'm trying to figure out a statistical mathematical methodology to measure the number of human years that is wasted by leftists hating on Trump on social media every day. But at the same time, I want to criticize people on the right who also waste that amount of time.
Barack Obama,
or Barack Obama, or just in general, because it's pointless to discuss it. Like, if you can make the jump from politics to philosophy, or politics to economics, or history, you've made a huge advancement in your life. But like I said, that's for another day.
right.
But yeah, it's and that's kind of, I mean, not one of the purposes of this podcast, but certainly one of those things. Like, yeah, young boys out there, if you guys are, and girls, all three of you that might be listening, your life is too damn short to be engaged in this political stuff to the extent that your forefathers are right now.
Yeah, I mean, young people don't worry about. I would like to say to shout out to people in the chat. If you got any questions now that you want to ask any of us, post them in there. I'll read them out. Yeah,
let's do that. I did before we switch here. I did want to ask Doc about his trip to South Dakota.
Yeah,
because that sound, was it as fun as I hoped it would be?
It was fun, and we had one day it was 105. The day we went up to Mount Rushmore. Another day we went to Spearfish, 55 degrees, so 60 degrees.
You're kidding?
No, I'm not. But actually the weather didn't suck. Although, like, I'm up in the hotel room on the 55-degree day we go to Spearfish, and it had rained the night before. My wife and daughter, they go down to the car, and I don't know what the hell it was, wrapping something up. And my phone rings, and it's my wife, and I'm like, oh, what the hell? And she's like, hey, you left your window open. And last night I'm like, God damn it. So I had to bring down, like, a couple towels and like wipe the seat off and the dash and everything. And it was fine, but I was like, how in the hell? But it's because it was 105, and it's Rapid City, so it's not like downtown Los Angeles where you leave your windows down and cars gone, but or Seattle, right? but anyway, yeah, it was awesome. You talk about politics. So we were at Custer Park, and Custer had the massive fire in December, which I didn't know about, but substantial parts of the park burned. And what happens is they let most of their firefighting force go because they're only there during kind of the peak season. And they went to Southern California where they had fire, so they couldn't really get the fire force together, the equipment. And so a lot of this shit was burned, and a lot of the pines and stuff like that. But there was this older couple, I'd say probably in their 80s, pull up, and we make conversation. We're at one of the parts where we're taking pictures of scenery, watching the bison and stuff like that. And the guy says, yeah, where are you from? And I said, right outside Madison, Wisconsin. He kind of pulls back and he's like, oh, like leftist politics, right? I'm like, yeah. I'm not into all that shit. I'm like, that's not my views and everything. And so it was kind of weird, but we got past that quick. And then he's like, you ever been to Mitchell and the Corn Palace? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, 65 years ago, I played high school basketball there. And he's like, we used to tell people like that we were going to burn it down. Like tourists would come and we'd sit outside and say like, hey, glad you came today because we're burning it down tomorrow, and just all this goofy shit. But I had two things that happened out there, which kind of, I thought were kind of like, I don't know, weird patriotism kind of infringed upon. I'm going to give the stories. The first one, we went to Mount Rushmore on Flag Day, and they had down below, they have an amphitheater, and they had this big flag and all of these chairs set up. So something was going on, and there's a park ranger behind me, and it was like, I don't know, 20 minutes to 9 or something. And he gets a call on his radio, and the guy's like standing right behind me, and they call down below, and they're like, only half the people showed up for their citizen. They were all going to become U.S. citizens during the ceremony. So they had maybe like 300-400 chairs set up down below, and it was very formal. And this ranger's like, well, what the hell? I mean, he's really kind of pissed. He's like, where are these people? Like they're becoming citizens today. And literally, like, the thing starts and more than half these seats are empty. And we're talking, it was nice morning. It was easy to get there, and I was really pissed because this guy was pissed. He was steamed, and
set up 400 chairs. That's got to be taking some time.
Well, yeah. But I mean, but here it is. I mean, you become a citizen. Okay. And I don't know, maybe this is like some ceremony after the fact. So, it's like you already signed the wedding, certificate, and then the marriage ceremony is just pomp and circumstance. But anyway, it pissed me off. It really irritated me because I'm like, damn it. Like I would have got here 2 days early. Like if I'm from, Lebanon or wherever the hell, and I'm becoming a US citizen, and I had made this reservation, and this guy was very elaborate. Like he's talking back to this one person down below, and he's like, these people should have been here, and this is irresponsible. And I'm just like, right on. I mean, there's no excuse for half these people just to blow off the ceremony that apparently you had to make this reservation for, and all of this to recognize your citizenship, and all these people are watching. And so that left a bad taste in my mouth. And
and here's, not to interrupt, but
pissed me off.
In front of Mount Rushmore, like of all places in the United States to become a citizen.
I know. And by the way, my oldest daughter, who's 11, I had her convinced, and still do, that Teddy Roosevelt is Dwight Eisenhower. So
what?
I'm like,
what?
Yeah, here's the 4 presidents. I'm like, it's Dwight Eisenhower. So
wait, hold on, hang on, wait. You just slid that one in there?
Yeah, I just slid that in. And then I also said, I'm like, the workers, I'm like, it's kind of like Hoover Dam. And she's really sharp on this stuff, but I tell it like just straight off. I'm like, when they built this thing, like when you're down blasting the rock, you couldn't go up to use the bathroom. So you used to have to piss off of like Lincoln's nose or something like that. Or stuff. And I'm like, I said, so these, it's not as glamorous as what it seems, and all of that stuff. So, all these stories. Yeah. And I think a couple of people around us heard that story too. But one guy was looking over at me and was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. So that story probably made its way back to like Vermont or something, and shared it some VFW meeting or whatever. But yeah, so anyway, that pissed me off because I was just like, damn it. I mean, obviously there was this commitment to you being there. You blew it off, and a beautiful day. And what better place to do? Like I if this was me coming to another country, like I would have been there 2 days in advance, set 5 alarms, had somebody call me, like, got there super early. So I don't know, that had a bad feel. But we did to switch gears, we went to Wind Cave, which was awesome.
Now help me out. Is Wind Cave the one by Hot Springs or past Custer?
It's past Custer a little bit.
Wind Cave. Jewel Cave is the one out west. Okay, you're in Wind Cave. That's in between Custer and
Hot Springs.
All right. Yeah. So Atham looked that up. Southern Blackfoots. Yeah. Okay, we got it. All right.
So I mean, so we do the tour, and the tour guide is from, I think it was from Puerto Rico. He was a really nice guy, super. A lot of energy he was going through, but was tying all of this into kind of this leftist narrative. This whole thing of like, okay, we're going to start out. So here's our leader. Here's our person in the back. We'll all stay together. We have to work as a team and all of this. And like, okay, I get all this shit. Like, it's good. But then he kept like, every time we stopped, like there's 3 stops in there, he would reinforce this of how we have to be a community, and communities overcome. Like, Jesus Christ, like, let's just keep going. Like, I have to, this thing's only 4 foot tall in some places, like my back is sore. But anyway, we get to the end, and before he takes us over to the area that has the elevators so we can get out, so we don't know that exists, he gives this like 5-minute talk on like how unity and everyone has to be together and all of this and welcoming and all this. And it was okay for the first minute, and then I was like, oh dude, like now you've just turned this into some like sermon, like some personal, and that all this cohesion is wonderful in a society and all of these things. And yeah, I get where you're going, but like, I just want to get out at this point. So that was definitely something I'm sure wasn't in the script.
Did you tell him to shut up?
That he went off on, and I'll tell you, there was a boy, and he was the coolest kid. He had autism, and he was right behind me in line, which is probably a good thing, because I would always like kind of let him know what was happening. And this kid like knew every fact about this, and then he was like just quizzing the tour guide, like quizzing the hell out of this guy. So I love this kid. This kid was just autism with autism was just awesome. Really nice. And then somebody took down like a 3-year-old and did all of the steps and stuff. And the kid's like, I don't want to be here. I want to get out. And I'm like, why the hell would you do that? But so yeah, it was great. I thought Deadwood was a lot more commercialized than what I expected. And so I mean we did do the walkthrough. They had some ceremony going on, and so yeah, 16A was very scenic.
Good. You did that with the loop-de-loos and up on the bridges and everything.
Yeah, we did, and that was really awesome. Yeah, we went to this alpaca ranch in Caputa. Okay, so it's 10 miles 10 miles outside. So my daughters wanted to go to this thing, but actually it was really cool because we get there and it's a little bit later in the day. And the guy that runs it, Glenn, is like, he's retired, and I don't know if he was like a physician's assistant or whatever. So he's probably like 60 years old and super cool guy, has this ranch. We're the only ones there. And it's kind of like that man bond thing where like checks you out and he's like, yeah, okay. Like, I'm going to give you the tour that I wouldn't give everybody else. So he takes us out onto the actual pasture, lets my wife and the kids go off with the alpacas, and he's kind of hanging out by me, and we're just talking about like the irrigation system, because I'm like, how does this work? He's like, well, it's this whole ditch, they turn this water on at certain times, and then they turn it off, and then we're talking about rattlesnakes, and he's like, yeah, only had one, it was in the garage, and then like his place had burned down a couple of years ago, and he's talking about fire response. I'm like, yeah, I was a firefighter. I'm like, must be bitch to get response out here because everything's volunteer. So like we had this commonality, just kind of this man talk, while my wife and kids are off with and he's here to take they had the feed and all of that, which was pretty cool. But that was really neat. And that's kind of one of those things where you cherish those conversations, like that 20 minutes of conversation with Glenn. I even remember his name was so valuable to me, because you just don't have those opportunities in life anymore, just to sit and to have conversations like that.
Right.
So
even out there, there's a lot of people out there, and that's like now the commander of the VFW, he got promoted in Hot Springs. His name was Willie, and he was a Creole, not World War II, Vietnam veteran, and you could chit chat with him. And then Lee, the former bartender. But yeah, no, there's still real people out there that you can have a great conversation.
Well, I did find, I mean, the people everybody we interacted with, it was funny because we stayed, what the hell was it, at a Holiday Inn in Rapid City. Has been built out so much since I was there 20 years ago. And I was looking at the pattern on the floor, and I kind of recognized it. And then I went down later to mail some postcards and shit like that. And then I was telling the people at the front desk, I'm like, do you know what this image is? And they're like, I have no idea. I'm like, this is the chandelier that hangs at the New York Met in New York at the Metropolitan Theater, like at the opera. This is the actual, it's all done in the carpet. Like, that's what this design is. And they had no fucking idea, and they didn't care anyway. But I'm like, there's your trivia point, So no, it was really, it was a great time. It was a lot of
driving, I'd imagine. I mean, it's not a short jaunt.
No, and I'm going through Custer. I've got a Buick LaCrosse, so that thing handles pretty well. But I saw somebody driving through Custer, where it's got the 1-lane bridges and then the tunnels. Yeah. And somebody had a pickup truck near pulling a huge RV. His engine was smoking. And not like antifreeze, because we passed them and I could smell it for like, another quarter mile. I'm like, that's oil. I'm like, and here was another thing. We're going through Custer, and there's a Humvee blocking off one of the roads. And there's 2 guys with rifles out in front of this Humvee. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what the hell's going on. So we drive down a little bit further, and I don't hear anything, but I look over to my right, and there's 2 black helicopters not far at all from us, and they're flying super slow in formation down. And so like, these are Black Op helicopters, so there's some drill and some shit going on. But I'm telling my wife, I'm like, don't take pictures. Like, I know some of this from the other side of how some of the business that I do and some of that stuff. I'm like, don't aim the camera up and do anything like that. And then the weirdest thing, not the weirdest thing, but on the way out there, I had a call from the New York Daily News, because because in Pennsylvania they had these state grants, and they're all over the place now for school safety funding. This is where I'm on a different side of safety funding than almost everybody else in the world, it seems. And that's why I get called by like the New York Daily News and stuff like that, because they know I'm going to give them the right side, not
critical analysis.
Right. So basically they said, there's all these grants that are coming out for like, spot shotters in schools, and all of this with, clotting agents and whatever the hell and all this awarded. So like, what do you think about this? And first of all, she's like, I hope I'm like, interrupt you. I'm traveling. I'm like, no, we're at a restaurant. Really, like I was like at a rest station. I almost pissed myself in the bathroom because like the stall was like, it's like trying to pee like up.
TMI.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I'm like, I don't know how tall these people are out there, but I mean, I'm like 6 foot. I'm like, this urinal is like 9 foot up on the wall. But anyway, so yeah, she's like, what do you think about this? So I'm in the car because it's too windy outside to like do this call, and I'm not going to like do it. So my kids can hear this too and stuff. I'm like, this is bullshit. I'm like, this whole thing is wrong. Here's what's wrong about it. This is, it's against the Second Amendment. This is all just hype. None of this will ever work. Like, this is just a waste of dollars. Like, all this is waste. This clever marketing is a waste. So the article comes out, and and critics say, and it's half the article, it's all my quotes. There's no critics. There's only me. There's all of these other people on the other side who say, this is a great idea. We should be doing this and all this stuff. I'm like, bullshit, never works. This is all science fiction. This is just clever, and all this is doing is inching people closer toward blaming guns as the problem and a move closer toward, diminishing the Second Amendment. I'm like, it's all horseshit. I mean, it's all garbage. And not that there aren't school safety things that are appropriate. I talk about those, but and so yeah, that part really was weird because that was just on the way out there, like I said. But no, I really enjoyed. Thanks for everything at Mount Rushmore. I encourage it, and I know DT's not here anymore, but did that family trip, and we had a lot to do. I mean, with everybody. We picked out certain things, and it was great to go up to Mount Rushmore. The Badlands were awesome.
Cool. You did hit the Badlands then.
Oh, and when we hit the Badlands, we came in, it was like 60 degrees and raining when we came in. And then when we left, it was 82 and sunny, and it changed just as we had gone through like that. I mean, so it was spectacular. And there was some kid who was like trying to like chisel out a stone or some fossil out of the one of the
highly
walls.
Illegal,
right?
Highly illegal.
And the parents are standing right there, okay, and whatever, and she's just whacking the hell out of this with some kind of like chisel type device, and she's probably like 10. And I'm like, holy shit, like that is wrong on so many levels. Like the parents not stepping in and saying, hey, like knock this off, like this, plus this is illegal and plus this other stuff. But just the sun was coming out, and because it had rained, it really brought out the colors of the Badlands. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I felt that night when I went to bed was this massive regret that when I was 20 years old, I didn't get with my roommates who were like, my best friends. We spring break together and everything, that we just didn't take 2 weeks and go Badlands. I know, Cappy, like you've done, and just like hike the hell out of it. Like, I so miss that because taking my daughters.
I could give you routes, man, because I've gone across it. Like, because you did the rim, right? You went up on the top, you did the rim. Yeah. I've hiked straight through it, both north to south and east to west.
I would have done that, and I felt this regret that night. So that's one of those things for people listening, is check out these places like the Badlands, and get together with a couple of friends and do it, whether you're 20 or 30. I mean, now it's obviously much more difficult for me and my daughters.
It's not. No, you're what, my age, maybe?
No, I mean, physically I can do it. Physically I could do it, but like with my daughters, they're not hikers and stuff like that, and they don't even wear the appropriate sandals. Like, I'm like, damn it, like we have to have whatever sandals, not the I'm like, we're going out to the Badlands. This is something we have to do for Dad.
You know what I should do? The problem, let me tell you, the problem about South Dakota is I have a hard enough time getting people to come out to like Vegas for a meetup, although we do manage to get some people. That's why I have to drive all the way to Leavenworth, Washington, to visit people, because these people are too lazy to visit me. But it would be really cool if I were to do like a super Cappite meetup. It would be in the Badlands and the Black Hills. It's like, all right, you're all flying to Rapid City, and you're all bringing your hiking gear, and we're doing some hardcore hiking shit. Like, we are going to tear up the Badlands and the Black Hills. And it'd be exhausting and taxing, but it would definitely be an experience people would not forget. And probably have to do it in September so it's not too hot and we don't have to pay like tourist prices because all the kids are back in school. But no, I'm glad you made it out. You made it out there. Did you make it through Spearfish Canyon? Drive through Spearfish Canyon? Good.
Yeah, absolutely. The scenic, just loved it completely. The only, what we talked about, the only place we didn't get to was Nemo. But we got everywhere else, and I thought Lead was really fascinating. With the old mining.
Sure, all the houses built up upon each other and everything.
Yeah, and we did the mining tour, and actually, it was this lady who, she was this elderly lady, and like her father was a foreman in the mine, but she really knew all of the mine stuff because her brother was a miner and all of this. So we're doing the mine and the mine tour and. That was really good. Like I said, there were certain things I wanted to do for me and some things I wanted to get my girls some awareness of other parts of the country and doing some things. I'm tired. I mean, I was tired with all the driving and stuff and then coming back and doing that concrete project and stuff like that. But certainly well worth it. And it wasn't that busy. It wasn't.
Even in June, really?
Yeah, it was busy, but it wasn't like crazy busy. One of the things that irritated, or I was like, Mitchell, South Dakota, we stopped at because there's this Native American prehistoric site, which was really cool. It's kind of got a dome over it, and you can go in and they're doing excavations and stuff. But there's like a huge Best Buy and a Menards and all this shit that's been built out in Ruby Tuesdays and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, this will never age like the downtown part of Mitchell or the downtown part of Rapid City or Deadwood, which only gets better with age. I mean, in 50 years, these will all be blighted shitholes that nobody will want to go to because they're all just thrown up and stuff like that, and they'll all be vacant. And so, I mean, I kind of like, somebody out there told me this too. They said, we feel like we're kind of losing what the area is all about. Like, because of these buildups of all of these, things that are coming in, like the Best Buy on each side of town and, the Menards and those types of things. And just all of these townhouses and hotels and stuff like that going up, which I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. But to me, there was a certain feel like in Lead and in Hot Springs and stuff like that, where you could just sense the especially Hot Springs, the huge brick that all of these buildings on Main Street were not brick, but the stones that they were
Redstone,
all built out of. Yeah, redstone, and just how that was and how that would be in another 50 years, it'd be the same thing. And it was just cool.
It's not really an opinion. Beckloff and Chris laments or rues the collapse of the mall, which you think about doesn't have that long of a history in the United States. It's basically from the 60s to the aughts. So it's a 40-year phenomenon on the mall. And there's still malls. We got the Mall of America. And malls themselves formed in Minnesota because it's too damn cold outside to have an open one. So
yeah, like the Super Mall in Edmonton, you see that giant thing up there.
Yeah. So but it's a natural evolution of the economy. And what you're talking about, what you lament, because I had the same lamentations and, oh gosh, we're losing Americana and blah, blah, blah. But especially motorcycle riding, if you take different routes, you don't go on the interstate. But like I took 212 because I like the route a little bit better. You went Highway 90.
Right.
And so there are towns along the way, but you don't see them because you drive past them and maybe you exit to go get gas or something like that. But yeah, downtown Mitchell, downtown Sioux Falls. And what you're seeing is in the olden days, you had to have a town every almost 10 miles, maybe 12 miles, in part because that's where you'd have enough critical mass of farmers to bring their crops to market to have it shipped off. And more specifically, because that's the amount of water that would be put in a steam locomotive engine before they have to have a water. And that's why you see water towers over the train tracks. And so these towns sprouted up. Well, you get diesel and then you get electric combines. You don't need it. It's not as labor intensive. So these towns are dying but you have these beautiful buildings, these beautiful downtown areas where like the bank has 1892 on its cornerstone. And I've actually come up with an idea to capitalize on some of those old historic downtown areas, but I'm not telling anybody because I don't want someone to run with it. But I do only need a couple $2 billion. So if there's any investors out there, please let me know. But that's just the way it goes. And what you look at, it's kind of a it's still a testament of good things, because if you look what these things are being converted into, you go downtown, they're being turned into coffee shops or restaurants, things that, you know, beforehand it was the hardware store, the fuel stop, or whatever else, like actual hard labor. Now you look at them, they're either not occupied or there's something more artistic or fun or frivolous or luxurious, you know, consignment shops and trinket stores and stuff like that. So the downtown area may not exist and be bustling like it was back in Mayberry days with Barney Fife and Andy Griffith. But it is, I think they're going to be the future. And this has nothing to do with my idea, but I think those small American towns are going to be the future of retirement. I think with prices getting so expensive in the city,
I think you're already seeing that.
Is it happening?
Yeah, especially in Washington State. This has been actually a huge problem that's politically had ramifications, and we saw this with the 2016 election, where there was the rural versus urban. You have a lot of people who in the rural areas have been struggling to, you know, have jobs or an economy for various reasons, but then you have people retiring, taking that money to their rural town in the middle of a very beautiful but maybe remote area. And then they're able so on top of not having any jobs for the rural people, they now have to compete with somebody coming in with a lot of money to buy houses. And so you're seeing that issue become problematic, and it's been revealed in some of the election results in our state, at least, where some districts that have been voting one way for decades is now flipping over. So we'll see what happens. It may turn around, but that's definitely one area my friends go fishing at. The town's not a lot of jobs, but a lot of nice homes there. They're just not owned by the people who grew up there or are living there. They're people who are retired.
Don't get me about those Seattle homeowners who own their house and then they're going to go move and bid up housing prices. I hate those bastards.
Well, you got, so on top of that, you got the baby boomers, but what you really got is the whole Airbnb thing, where somebody will buy a house and then they won't even rent it out long term for somebody in that area. They just Airbnb it every single night or as many nights as they can, because they're just going to make more money. And it's an interesting discussion or debate to have, because on one hand, it's their house, they get to do what they want with it, but on the other hand, it completely destroys what a lot of people would say the integrity.
Well, it destroys a sense of community, I think.
Yeah,
there's no sense of community cohesion at that point, where someone automatically introduces that kind of business model to an area, and it has all these ancillary impacts on society.
That's kind of what zoning. Yeah, that's kind of what zoning. People can talk about zoning for hours on end, but the whole point of it is that you have businesses in areas that are appropriate for that business. People will say, well, somebody can do whatever they want with their property in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Well, who wants to have a mechanic shop next to their house, right next door? Or tell me that if your neighbor was trashing their own property. This is partly why I'm not a huge fan of the whole HOA thing, but there's a reason why they exist, because what somebody does on their property next to you affects your value of your property, but it also affects the living standard and living quality of the neighborhood. And when nobody else in a neighborhood actually lives there, it almost, the analogy I give is where you had in Ireland for centuries, the Irish, ethnic Irish could not own land. They were legally not allowed to own their own land. So their landowners were all these English guys who lived in London. And so you kind of have that situation in some ways here, where you have people who live 100 miles away. They own the land. They don't live on it. So they rent it out to somebody else who has even shorter time span of being on that property than say the Irish, because at least they lived on that land. Whereas in this situation, you have people who are just there for the night. So how do you think they're going to treat the neighborhood? Do you think?
Don't get me started about those Irish people, man.
No, don't get
me started about the
Irish.
What I'm saying is the Irish had no control over the land that they lived on because they didn't own it. So there was no and the people who owned it didn't really. It wasn't like they had to compete with the Irish because the Irish were completely cut out of the game.
Oh,
Well,
sorry.
they were not allowed to own property. They weren't allowed to vote. So there was no sense of fear that if I don't maintain this property, I'm going to lose it to somebody else, or it's going to lose its value. And that's partly what caused the potato famine or blight, is they just weren't taking care of the land because it was basically just theirs, given to them. But going back to the whole situation now, you kind of get that same feeling. Like, imagine you're living on a street and you've got kids, and all the houses around you are Airbnbs, and so there's just parties every other night, and your kids have nobody to play with. Nobody's in the school system, and that's what ends up happening, is they end up just turning into a resort town for rich people.
Not even hot Russian chicks are involved.
No Russian chicks.
Damn.
I know. That's what it's all about.
Well, anyway, guys, can I just jump in here? There's a couple things I want to say. Just on TJ's point, if anyone's interested in that little tidbit of Irish history, check out that film, The Field, which was kind of at the tail end of that when the Irish were finally allowed to own property. I can't remember when the movie was made, but Tom Berenger was in it, and God, I can't remember that other guy. I think he was in Game of Thrones. I think he was.
That English actor with the accent.
Yeah. Anyway. Check it. Go IMDb at the Field. It's a good movie, but it takes place, I think, in I don't know, was it the 1920s or 1930s in Ireland? And it's called The Field. The guy was leasing it. That's what the Irish used to have to do. They used to have to lease the land from the English owners, the Protestants, or the Catholics were all fucked over. But anyway, it's okay with you guys. I'd like to just get the listeners involved a little bit, because let's do
that. We'll wrap it up here. Go ahead.
What Dave has done on his summer vacation took a lot of time. Just teasing, buddy. Okay, let's see. Atham Aldakua says,
don't get me started. He's just a Mexican. You could ignore him. He doesn't. Barely human.
Fernando Covet says, boycott Microsoft. They fund the Democrats big time. They probably do. He also says, Steve Ballmer helped to fund Stagwell Group, which has acquired nearly $1 billion in marketing companies to help elect Dems. Norfolk Coolum. Hey, I love this podcast. Do you think it's okay to unfriend people on Facebook who only talk politics?
Yes. You get to do what you want to do.
Get the fuck off Facebook is my let's see. Clearly seeing the left ramp up. Trumpians, federal employees, and admin staff are being tracked down, harassed, and confronted. Any suggestions as the activists increase resistance towards us?
I just bring mace. Mace is a nice medium. It's not a gun. It's not assault. It's usually typically used in defense. But I don't know. I don't go looking for trouble. I mean, if the SJWs come for me, they're in for a world of hurt. So just
I would kind of go with Aaron's suggestion there. Right now is not the time to go out and, I mean, eventually they're gonna, don't interrupt someone when they're, they're fucking themselves up. Don't stop someone from digging their own grave. They're going to be the ones that cross the line. Let them do something stupid. Right. But of course, be aware of your surroundings. Be smart, and if depending on what the laws are where you live, be armed. But know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, I'd say no. Do not go to political rallies. Do not go to political protests. Do not go.
It's a waste of time.
Well, no, I wouldn't even say it's a waste of time. It's you are giving them opportunities to not only confront you in a political situation, in a legal situation, where the whole thing that they're going to try and do is get close enough to you physically where they can get in a sucker punch or a blow, but you are still in a legally ambiguous spot, self-defense wise, because
they're cowards.
That's their MO. And then if you present a threat, and then of course the Antifa are all going to wear black. So the moment he punches you, or she or Z or whatever,
they'll run away.
No, they're going to go run into the black block or black whatever, and then they're going to try and you can get doxxed, you can have all this horrible stuff happen to you because you attended this thing, which is really not going to change anything. Like, you just don't give
all right, we got it. We're old. My listening is old. TJ. We're not going to go down to the local.
I'm not talking. I'm talking. If we're talking to youngsters, they get really amped up and they're like, "Oh, we're going to go change things, and we're going to go out in the street, and we're going to change the world for the better overnight."
No, you're not.
Waving signs. Well, that's my point.
Nobody wears pink pussy hats here. Nobody wears pink pussy hats.
Right, but people.
No, I mean, TJ just means like on the right. I think my opinion on this is, I don't know if TJ agrees. Is look, the time isn't here yet for us to go out and form the militias, but don't disperse them yet into action. It's time to stay bunkered in for a little while until a clearer view of the terrain unfolds itself. That's my 2 cents.
Let them come to you. Let the enemy come to you and be ready for them. That's all. And I think having mace is a very good. You're not going to go to okay. You might go to jail, but you're not going to get accused of a felony. Whereas a pistol or punching someone, you will. So
yeah, that's a good thing. Mace is pretty okay.
What else we got there, John?
Brian Wagner, do you think the U.S. will at the federal level will fix marijuana laws now that the FDA recognizes the prescription drug? Aaron was in Washington, California land a while ago seeing it.
You could smell it. You literally could. You'd be driving down like, hey, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm in this state. I don't know. I think Trump at least will let it. I think he's been very libertine and states' rights, and that he lets the states handle that. So gay marriage, marijuana, I think he'll let. I don't think
Jeff Sessions would like to round up and shoot everybody. He
cares
about, but
he needs to chill out.
I don't know if there'll be a federal law passing it. Legalizing. I think it's just going to be one of those things that maybe eventually over time it'll be what's the word? Not legalized, but decriminalized.
I think
like fat chick.
He'll do it like strategically in a way that he neutralizes anybody who might. It's the thing about him. Regardless of how you feel on a policy issue with him, he's pretty good at knowing when the right time to do something is that's going to neutralize and distract from something else that's going on. So he'll pick a moment when it's in his interest to drop that policy and have it dominate the headlines, particularly if he's like, he's done something stupid or he's run his mouth and he sees that it's costing him, he might drop it then. I think it's going to happen at some point just because it's a good way to gain support, because I think the prohibition is not very popular anymore. Even people who don't like weed, it's like, well, we're wasting billions of dollars, going after.
It's a non-issue. I'm not going to worry about it. So, yeah. All right. What else, John? Who else is on the chat room?
Let's see. I'm trying to get to questions here.
Thanks for doing this, by the way, John.
No problem, man. Let's see.
Anyone yelling at me for not seeing Dr. Strangelove?
Vertical farming is happening next. Let's see. Small Scale Life says, "Hi, check out my blog if you want to see really small scale one in action. I am about to record an accompanying podcast about it." I don't know if you guys know Small Scale Life.
No, I know. He's a friend of mine. Yep. He runs a good website. Might as well give him a plug and a shout out. Small Scale Life, if you're looking like for farming and post-apocalyptic victory garden type stuff. I hang out with him regularly, actually. He lives out in the Twin Cities. So
cool. That's actually a cool name for what he's doing.
He's very philosophical in his podcast. And he's like NPR. He's like, hey, welcome to Small Scale Life. And today we're going to talk about beans. Do you like beans? I like beans. And you're like, wow, maybe I like beans too. Maybe I'm really chilling out with the beans. But
with that voice, he'll have you. Fernando Covet says that's why housing is so expensive in Canada. Foreign money. Yeah, I can attest to that. I've seen what they've done to Vancouver, BC. Holy shit, the Chinese, my God.
The Chinese, yep.
Oh my God, that town is just one giant Chinatown. The whole city.
Good. They work. They're engineers. Fine with me.
I was watching a documentary on Asian investors swooping up real estate in New York City, killing off supply for yuppies. Well, that's not necessarily
awesome.
Let's see. What do you think about the RVers living?
I hate them. Oh my God. I could do oh Jesus. I was like, yeah, let's wind it down, blah, blah, blah. But no. RVers are not dumb on many levels. They're dumb on all levels. And I have very dear friends who are RVers that live in Colorado, and he's rolling his eyes right because we've gone through it. Makes no sense on any level. Financially, you're paying way more in gas. You have to rent space. You might as well just get a hotel. They're costly. Just fly, just get a car, go drive, stay at a hotel. It's cheaper, it's better, it's nicer. And RVs are a pain in the ass to drive. And then when I'm riding out west or in a car, they just go slow. And it's by no fault of their own, but they just go slow because there's more weight. And when you get into like a mountainous area, you're going over a pass, they'll block the traffic. They're dangerous. Their engines will blow out like Doc. You saw that guy with his truck engine. Right. Yep. He's trying to haul it. There was a road outside Highway 16 outside of Buffalo, Wyoming, where I used to live. And every time I go up to go do a little bit of hiking up the mountain, sure enough, there'd be a truck with a trailer. Just don't do it. Just don't. No RVs. Cappy Cappites do not do RVs. We just don't because it's stupid and it doesn't make any sense at any level.
All right, so no RVers.
No RVers, no.
Nathan asks, where's the super chat, you gobshites? Well, it's coming. Apparently, I don't know how many more viewing hours we need.
We are shy 20,000 minutes. That's it. I was
20,000 minutes. So,
okay.
Yep, we're almost.
So like, share, and subscribe this, and we'll have it. Maybe my next week we'll have it up.
If anybody, let's do this. If anybody's listening, you really want to help out. One, subscribe. That helps out because Google has all these metrics that you need. Blah blah blah. The other thing is just even if you've listened to the podcast or if you haven't, throw it on and watch it because that counts as minutes. We only need 20,000 more. I think we'll blow through that starting next week so I can monetize. Then we can have the super chats. So yes, you'll all be able to give me more money.
Yeah, and then I'll actually I'll have to read these things.
Then you almost have to. Yeah.
I'll be forced to because it's going to pop up on the screen. I'm going to have to do it.
No, and I gotta, like it's always an evolving process, and this is an embryonic podcast, and there's always growing pains. But yeah, we gotta. I'm getting more and more aware, especially with a live stream, why Beckloff and other people have a producer. Like you got to keep on. So yeah, we'll be able to answer the live chats or the super chats or whatever it is, but that'll be coming probably very most likely next week. So I gotta apply for monetization, Google. It could be a week.
We'll do the monetization now. So then the way it works is then you'll be all set for the super chats once you reach their proper analytics.
Right. But who knows? Google could take a week or two to get back to me and say, oh yeah, we've sent you to the reward of viewers, and even though you're not Karl Marx, we're going to approve you anyway. Our Karl Marx remedy program, and yeah,
you're slightly to the right of Marx, so it's going to take an extra couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Wayward Hero asks, guess my question is, how will immortality affect future society for possible multiple billionaire freely moving around? I'm not really sure what
he's asking.
Yeah, I mean, that interesting question. I mean, we could spend too much time kind of thinking about that. Be worth pondering, I suppose. But we're kind of wrapping up now. That's kind of a deep one. That's kind of a deep question.
Yeah, let's have that towards. How about this? You know what? Email me if you guys got more ponderous questions. Just email to, because that's the problem with the chat is I gotta distract myself from it to go. But if you have some questions, you guys know where I am. Go to assholeconsulting.com. Shoot me an email. If you got a serious, don't send me some dumbass shit. Just send me if you got a real.
don't clog up his email box.
Don't clog up my email box with dumb shit. I like a girl. I'm going to charge you for that. But if you have a more esoteric philosophical question that's podcast worthy, send it over there.
Yeah, because he's hard enough for us to deal with as it is. I mean, he doesn't have the nicest temperament, so we don't want him any more assholey than he already is. So come on. Let's see. Does Cappy have a crush on Mary Jane Watson? She is a redhead.
Mary Jane Watson. Let's look that girl up. Hang on. Give me a second here. Well, what the hell? Oh, Firefox is. God damn it. Really? Honest to God. Updating now. Jesus Christ. Steve.
All right, well, we'll put that question on hold.
Wait. Mary Jane what?
Watson. If it's a redhead, chances are Cappy's in love.
Let me take a look here.
I think so.
Is this a cartoon character or a human?
I don't know.
No, Mary
this
Jane
is a question
Watson.
that you should ask Beckloff. He's the redhead.
Beckloff is rolling over in his grave right now.
Comic books. Oh, this is Spider-Man's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought this was an actress. Well, yeah, I guess so. As far as redheads go, or fictional comic book characters go, I mean,
as much as you can have a crush on a fictional comic book character,
yeah, as much as I can. I'll take Poison Ivy any day over over Mary Jane. I like the bad girls, but yeah, I mean, I would not if Aaron went into like, John, what was that? Doc, you might know this. TJ, you didn't have pubes then. What was the name? Cool World. You guys remember that movie, Cool World? It was half cartoon. It predated Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, I don't
think I saw Cool. I remember Who Framed Roger Rabbit. That was epic at the time. That was pretty cool.
Cool World, I think, predated it, and it made that jump between cartoon and real world. But it doesn't matter. All right. What else we got?
Okay. Brian Wagner says nanotech could be that boom for the health industry. Yeah, maybe. It's pretty cool in Star Trek, the next generation. Small Scale Life says, thanks for the plug, lads. I'm definitely not NPR. Might have to rule out.
Yeah, tune into him. Yeah, I'm definitely not NPR. And let me bust his balls a little bit, because that's what I do with people I like. So you'll tune into him, and I swear to God, I'm like, look, dude, I don't want to mention his name because I want him to keep anonymous. You know, he's got family and all that. But I'm like, dude, don't tell people what you're going to tell them, because what he'll do is like, today we're going to talk about plants. Are they green? Are they brown? What are they? Do they come out of the ground? And then I'm going to talk about this. I'm like, dude, just tell us. Don't tell us you're going to tell about. Well, now the guy's got thousands of listeners. And I realized that maybe I'm not the only person on the planet, and there might be people with different tastes and preferences. So he's got actually really good. But yeah, it's a totally zenning out, meditative, chilled NPR voice. So you can listen to him.
Well, Aaron, this might be good for you. You know, this might calm you down a little bit.
No, I do not need to be calmed down. I am a specialist. I have a role in life. And it is my anger and frustration and rage and hatred that got me this far. And the frustration and rage will continue until I'm dead. And I'm not, what do you want me, doped up on Ritalin or some kind of lobotomy dope? I mean,
no, I love you the way you are, but you know, that's me. You know, I'm kind of a Northeast, New York guy. I don't know.
Right.
You know.
Right. We'll let Small Scale Life be Small Scale Life, which is hello and welcome to Small Scale Life. And I'll be like, fucking filth, foul, freaking foul.
Cappy's going to be Cappy.
Cappy's going to be Cappy. All right, what else we got?
Norfolk Kulam asks, you mentioned that it's pointless to try and help people. What could a college student, accounting major, do to actually help and not just make myself feel good?
Like he wants to help people? Like out of altruism or what?
Well, he doesn't expand on it, but I mean, let's assume the benefit. Like, you know, he wants to, do something good. He's young, idealistic. He's a college student.
The best thing he could do is support himself. If everybody just took care of themselves, the only people that would have to be taken care of would be like, the generally mentally disabled or physically handicapped. That's the number one thing you can do.
It also depends on what the help looks like. Like if it's just talking to somebody who needs somebody, like I guess some encouragement on something that they're dealing with, or somebody who's struggling to just like they're being given false information about something. They're just buying into some sort of social myth, and you just point out, you tell them the truth. You don't lie to them like everybody else does. That's one way of helping them. But another thing that I would caution young people, kind of like what you're just saying, Cappy, to focus on improving yourself, but also don't waste your time on people who will not respect the effort that you put in to help them. You
charge them.
The whole point of Cappy's consulting firm is that people have got to show that they got skin in the game, that they actually do want to change and they want to improve themselves. So people have to show that they're going to respect you when you spend time and energy to help them out.
No, it's not even that. I just want the money. I really just
no. But I'm just saying for people who want to help out, but also what do you want to help them accomplish, and are they actually interested in that? And if they're not able to show that, then don't waste your time. And I would also add, just as a final note, accept the fact that most people don't want to change the problems in their lives that they are going out and seeking help on. They are not going to actually change even when you present them. This is something that Cappy and I were talking about when he was over at my house. A lot of people will be told this is what you need to do to change. They will nod their head. They will say, yes, I know, but they will not change it.
Absolutely.
So that's just accept it.
That is very true.
Yeah, it's the way the world is, and we can be cynical about it, or we can just say, okay, this is how it is. Let's target those who actually are going to be that rare people who will make that change.
I would also add, if you're in college, you don't have time to be helping out other people. You gotta take care of yourself, pay off your debts, get out there, and it's not worth it. It's just charge.
GameSmithy suggested that he learn a trade in your off time and donate your skills. Well, that's assuming this guy's got any off time. He's a college student, assuming full time, and probably like most of us has a part-time job. If he's listening to our podcast, he's probably got his shit together. But I think I think learning a trade, like a hands-on trade, is a good idea just for anybody at any age.
Yeah, barter for blowjobs. Girl wants her oil change, or car breaks down. All right, here's what's gonna cost.
Ass, gas, or cash.
When you do it. Look, I'd have to pay for your dates anyway. Dad, let's just cut through the bullshit. Do you want your car to roll or not? Okay.
Oh, that's another thing I would add. Whenever a girl's just randomly for no reason complimenting you, just expect them to assume they're going to ask you to do something. They're going to ask for your help in some way. Just be prepared.
I love how TJ gets these epiphanies. It's like, hey, did you know girls do things to get stuff out of you? I was like, yes, TJ, we've known.
Well, no, I'm talking about young. Okay, again, we're talking about young men here. We're like, oh, she must really like me. No, she's
no, she wants something from you. Is what she wants. Yeah.
Hey, going back to the guy, the accountant major. Another thing I think is sometimes just be real, be the member check. If someone is going, if you're in accounting, someone is going to you and asking some questions now, about what the hell is this mortgage loan rate or whatever on a car or something like that, or some financial stuff. Like, just be honest. Back you guys remember hearing about Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Harvey Firestone, John Burroughs, between 1915 and 24, these guys just went out on camping trips, like, together and basically busted each other's balls about whatever, but it was member check. They were honest with each other, and that was something where no one is honest today. They're not willing to do that. So sometimes, like, people like, hey, what's your opinion on this? I mean, Cappy, you give that out, but if this guy's area of expertise more or less is in accounting, and someone is asking some questions or whatever and saying, or like, hey, my parents are going through whatever, is there anything I should be looking up on the internet or getting familiar with? Like, be absolutely honest. I mean, not to the point where you're not representing yourself as what you are, as like, if you're not a CPA or anything, but that whole member check thing, I think all of us can do. We can do that with people if they come to us. Is just
I would agree with the caveat that is we're living in different times right now, and there is more to lose by being brutally honest. So you might have to temper that with the current age that we live in. But yes, I totally agree with that advice. Anthem says, I think small scale life rocks. That's what we are going to do. All right. Yeah. Michael Puza asks, will you have other guests on the podcast in the future? Well, Cappy?
Yes. The one of the main things, like I said, there's always growing pains, and you want to get the podcast stabilized. So we're going to do like maybe 10 podcasts. We'll get it down. We're getting into our rhythm now. But I do want to invite specialists. I'm going to do interviews with groups of people that have expertise in certain fields. I don't know if you guys ever watch Engineered Truth, Matt Tran's channel. And you guys ever watch him?
No, it sounds like something I'd be into,
though. Smart guy. But he'll, like, for example, he'll have a chemical engineer on, say, what's chemical engineering like? He'll have a cop on, what's it like being a cop? Mine are going to be more panel-like and a little bit more philosophical, not so career-oriented. But, for example, I'm going to get women in STEM. Because even though we don't have a lot of female listeners, but I want to talk to women in STEM, say, how did you do it? Blah, 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 thoughts, something productive, like an older brother. Because I know this shocks you guys. I don't know everything. I know most things. But I don't know everything. Yeah, I know.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked.
But I would like to have, people, and the doc, I have like 3 whole separate episodes I'd like to interview the doc on, because he sent me a bunch of topics.
Well, you could have
like,
one with me and the doc on, because actually my major in college was actually security management.
Really? Okay.
And we got to do that sometime, John. We got to set that up.
Yeah, no, and I've done executive protection. I've dealt with women with stalkers and all that. I was a privacy consultant. That was all back in the '90s, though. But if
TJ should write a film noir book about you.
Yeah.
Oh no, I got to. Oh yeah, I got to talk to. You got to stay on the line after over. I got a couple of questions for both of you. Okay. Anthem says testosterone is dropping at alarming levels. Stop talking about comics.
Have you guys ever? Well, I guess none of you met Anthem, but you guys know Anthem, right? Kind of.
I don't know him
from your podcast.
He's a fun. Yeah, I always give him guff because I say Anthem looked this up. I forgot somehow where he was asking me questions about geography or something like that. But no, he's a buddy of mine. He lives out near Lake Tahoe, and I visit him occasionally and I bust his balls. That's all. So he's a good guy.
No,
spelunker. He's a spelunker. He's like into caving. Huge philosopher, economics. Like he reads a lot of books. He's read more books than I've written. But yeah, just a cool guy you'd want to hang out with. If a guy called Anthem says, "Hey, I'm coming to town. Can I hang out?" Say yeah.
All right, cool.
Even though he's a no good, dirty Mexican, but charity and affirmative action, that kind of stuff.
Fernando says Brian may want to check out Singularity FM with Nikola Danilov. I'm not sure what that means. This one I was supposed to say Anthem. Anthem calls you a Sith Lord. I think he meant that as a compliment, though.
All right, we got any questions up, or is it just me and Anthem going back?
Could the podcast host an audience call in as a one-off episode? That might be something.
We might, yeah. I mean, like I said, baby steps at first. We get this down first and manage it. But yeah, inevitably I wouldn't mind having callers come in. But that's definitely where a producer comes in and they gotta bring people to the screens.
MGTOW comment says, what do you think would happen if prostitution was made legal? Well, you can just check out Vegas or Nevada. Not Vegas.
Nothing would happen. It's all legal.
Okay. That's it for the questions, guys.
Sweet. Cool.
And I didn't get to tell you about my Fight Club my making Fight Club soap, but maybe next episode.
Let's do that next because I do. I mean, it's good we have great conversationalists because I want to talk about that clarinetist. Will you guys hear about that?
No.
The kid who got accepted to like some great clarinetist school and was going to study under the greatest clarinetist, and then his girlfriend faked a rejection letter.
Oh, yes.
$40,000 scholarship. She tossed it in the garbage. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well,
she actually wrote his declining it. She wrote an email.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. No, we'll go into that because there's a lot to learn, but we'll do that next week.
Yeah, that's a lot to learn for you young guys about the dangers of women.
Oh, there are so many lessons.
And the ruthlessness of it. All right. Well, I mean, you guys want to, because we're going to have to round this. We're going to have to end this, guys. We're running out of time here, man. We're not
running. No, we're not. Look, we're not DT and the man. We're not we're not Bernard Chapin. It has to be 53 minutes and then we have to end. We go as long as we want. Speaking of people asking for advice and me giving it and then them not listening. But what was I gonna say? All right, let's get through this stuff. There are 33 people listening now. Like the podcast. Go click on the thumb. All of you can do that right now. Subscribe if you want. That's cool. We have links. They'll be posted down below, but the main ones would be assholeconsulting.com, olderbrother.com, and then patreon.com/Aaron Clary. And then the links down below if you want to do all your online shopping to help finance me, because I do not like taking charity, but I'll take it. If you force money down my throat, I'll take it. But if you do all your Amazon shopping, please do it through my Amazon affiliate program. Next week, we should have Super Chat up. Should be monetized. There'll be a little bit of growing pains with that. We'll have to figure out how it plays into the deal. And then I want to talk about Turd Flagging Monkey talking about sex bots. Not that I'm into internet drama, but I just love the people who think sex bots is what's going to save the world. I think that's it. All right, Doc, where are you at so people could come visit you?
Check out safetyphd.com, safetyphd.com.
Cool. John.
You can find me Twitter at John_Steele99 and John Steele Show on YouTube.
Are you going to put that awesome voice of yours to use and start doing more podcasts and shows, or am I the last person you interviewed and had a show with?
No, I'm going to be setting up an appointment with TJ as soon as we go off air to set up an appointment.
Good. TJ, do you do anything? Are you active online? Do you do stuff?
No, I just play video games.
Good. You catch small fish?
But if you are interested, you can go to tjmartinell.com. I have all my book stuff there. You can also go to my podcast, weekly podcast, soundcloud.com/tjmartinell. And then also you can follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/tjmartinell.
Good. All right. Hey, and TJ, it was great to see you traveling there out to Seattle. I finally got back to the Twin Cities and finally had time to sit and relax. It was really cool. Thanks for hosting me. John, sorry I missed you, man. I would have loved to meet up with you, but we'll get you next time. And Doc, I will be coming to Wisconsin relatively soon, but we'll have to meet up along the interstate there somewhere.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yep. So, all right. We'll see you guys later.